Hello everyone, if you're new to my channel, consider liking and subscribing. It will make me feel wonderful if you do that. Thanks. By the way, I also have another Naruto and Luffy fanfiction channel. If you are interested, link is in the description.
Shadows and Serpentes by Alenthedragon. This is a fan fiction about what if Luffy eat a different devil fruit instead of the gum fruit. He will have the dragon fruit, model dragon of darkness and shadows. He is joined by Hancock, who is his age here, and has a different fruit as well. Hope you like it. Adios.
The calm belt was dead silent. No wind, no waves, just a flat endless ocean. The shadow Sorrow sat motionless like a giant black coffin. On deck, a furious Zoro bellowed as he grabbed an oar. Why the hell are we rowing? Why not the damn cook, or the bomb freak, or the smug three-eyed gremlin? Luffy, sitting cross-legged with captain's authority, gave a long sigh. Sanji's busy doing his therapy, with Pudding, Gem, and Chopper. From the galley below, a muffled boom rattled the deck, followed by Sanji's screaming. Why do you keep putting bombs in my pants? Zoro's eyebrow twitched. Figures. Luffy continued, ticking off fingers. Mikita's making lunch, Hancock is with Nami. Everyone froze. Kaya blinked nervously. With Nami, she's been throwing up all day. Vivi frowned. Luffy, are you sure she's not pregnant? The entire rowing squad went pale. Even little Isa gasped. Pregnant. Luffy's face deadpanned. No. Chopper already gave her a test. She's just, bride nervous. From the cabin, a shriek echoed. If this dress doesn't fit, I swear I'm killing somebody. Followed by Hancock's dramatic voice. Don't worry, beloved. You look divine even when vomiting into a bucket. The whole ship rocked from Nami hurling again. Meanwhile, on deck. Zoro, Yamato, Alvida, Kuro, Robin, Vivi, Kaya, Tashigi, Marianne, Kobe, Viper, Usopp, and even tiny Isa were lined up with giant oars, rowing furiously while grumbling. Zoro cursed under his breath. Yamato laughed, muscles bulging. Usopp wheezed. Why am I here? I'm not built for this. Isa yelled, shut up, Longnose, I'm smaller than you and I'm still rowing. Alvida slammed her oar against the water with a grin. Feels good to put you weaklings to work. Robin chuckled behind her oar. At least it's good exercise. Kobe's arms shook, sweat pouring down. This isn't normal training. Viper barked at him like a drill sergeant. Row harder, boy. Pretend the sea itself wants to eat you alive. Luffy yawned happily from the captain's chair, chewing on meat. See, I told you this was a great idea. Zoro snarled at him. Captain, if I didn't know better, I'd say you're just making us suffer because you're lazy. Luffy grinned. That too. After 3 hours of relentless rowing, Luffy finally stood up and stretched. Break time, he declared. The moment he said it, nearly everyone on the rowing squad collapsed like corpses across the deck. Kaya face planted on the planks, Kobe twitched like a dying fish, and poor Usopp lay sprawled out gasping, tell, my plants, I love them. Only 3 were still standing tall, Yamato, Viper, and Zoro. Yamato flexed her arms and shouted with glee. Man, what a good workout. Viper snorted. HMPH. This is child's play. Zoro cracked his neck, scowling. TCH, weaklings. Usopp raised his head, veins popping. You 3 are crazy. Just then, the galley door creaked open. Out stepped Sanji, hair singed, suit tattered, skin covered in soot, but standing calm like a Zen monk. Boom. A stray spark from Gem's earlier bomb went off behind him, but Sanji didn't even flinch. I am ready, he said in a perfectly steady tone. I am stone. Luffy blinked, then grinned. Oh, Sanji, Pudding, Gem, Chopper. Judging by that creepy calm face, I guess it worked. Pudding, with one hand wrapped in bandages, nodded. Yes, Captain. The therapy was effective. Gem snickered darkly. Explosively effective. Chopper rubbed his temples. And I'm never supervising again. Luffy gave a thumbs up. Good. After lunch, back to rowing, we'll be at Amazon Lily in 2 hours. Sanji saluted proudly. Yes, Captain. And as soon as we dock, I'll begin preparations for your grand wedding feast. That was when Zoro hurled an oar at him. Not so fast, curly brow. You 4 are rowing first. That clear? Sanji caught the oar with a twitching eyebrow. Huh, me. Jem immediately tried to slink away. I should probably check my bombs. Chopper waved his hooves frantically. I can't. I have to reorganize the clinic. But Kaya stomped her foot and shouted, oh no you don't. We already stocked the medicines and equipment yesterday. Pudding clutched her hand with a pout. OWW, my hand still hurts from therapy. Sanji groaned, holding his ribs. And my bones are broken from therapy. Pudding, me, and Chopper clearly need. Yamato suddenly loomed over them, casting a shadow like a thundercloud. Her glare could have frozen a sea king. Fore, on the oars. After lunch. The sheer authority in her voice made even Viper raise a brow in respect. Sanji, Pudding, Jem, and Chopper all stiffened, sweat dripping down their necks. Yes, ma'am, they mumbled in perfect unison. The crew gathered in the dining hall, bowls of steaming rice and Makita's fragrant curry spread across the table. Laughter and groans mixed as the exhausted rowers shoveled food into their mouths. The doors creaked open, Hancock entered, looking utterly drained, with Salome slithering behind her and Richie limping at her side. Both companions looked as if they had been through a war. Without a word, Hancock collapsed into her chair, grabbed a bowl of curry, and began eating like a soldier fresh from battle. Luffy blinked. So, how's Nami? Hancock sighed, rubbing her temple. Nervous. Very nervous. Vivi nodded knowingly. Yeah, we could hear her screaming through the walls. Makita raised a hand timidly. Should I bring her some food to her cabin? Hancock gave her a look so cold it made the table shiver. Your funeral. She's basically Bridezilla 2.0 right now. She threw a chair at Salome earlier and declared she's on an emergency diet so she can fit perfectly in her dress. Salome hissed weakly in agreement. Hancock set down her spoon and turned sharply toward Luffy. I know the three of us are getting married, but why am I the only one dealing with Nami's meltdowns while you sit on the deck forcing everyone else to row like slaves? The dining hall went silent. Then the entire crew, Zoro, Yamato, Kaya, Alvida, Kobe, Usopp, even little Isa, pointed at Luffy in perfect unison and shouted. That's exactly what you're doing, you slave driver. Luffy froze mid-bite, sweat dripping down his cheek. And no, I just thought it was a good workout. Hancock's lips curled into a sweet but dangerous smile. Then it's settled. You go speak with Nami. She stood, cracking her knuckles. While I handle rowing duty. The rowers cheered like prisoners freed from chains. Thank you, Lady Hancock. Luffy paled. Me, talk to Nami when she's Bridezilla. From the cabin, another crash echoed, followed by Nami's furious scream. These shoes don't match the dress. Luffy gulped. I'm gonna die. Inside her cabin, Nami was a storm in human form. Dresses tossed across the floor, shoes scattered everywhere, makeup kits overturned. I'm too fat for this dress. These shoes don't match. Everything is a disaster. She screamed, hurling a pillow that smacked Luffy in the face as he ducked in. Nami, calm down. Luffy pleaded. Don't tell me to calm down. She hurled another shoe. What if I trip at the wedding? What if I? Luffy suddenly caught her wrists gently, his tone firm but soft. Oi, everything's going to be okay. Nami froze. Tears welled up in her eyes as her lip trembled. Luffy smiled, pressing his forehead against hers. You're not just marrying me. You've got me, and Hancock, and the whole crew behind you. You're not losing anything, you're gaining everything. For a long moment, Nami just stared at him, and then she collapsed into his arms, sobbing. I'm such an idiot. Here I am, acting like a monster, when really, I hit the jackpot. You as my husband, and Hancock as my wife. She hugged him tight, then kissed him through her tears. Luffy chuckled, wiping her cheeks with his thumb. That's more like it. They held each other a little longer before stepping out together, Nami leaning into him, calmer than she had been in days. But the moment they reached the deck. Captain, save us. Usopp's scream pierced the air. Luffy and Nami's eyes widened at the chilling sight. Yamato stood at the center of the deck, cracking a massive whip like a drill sergeant from hell. Hancock reclined elegantly in a deck chair, sipping a cocktail with utter serenity. Salome coiled nearby, flicking its tongue like an overseer. Richie the lion pounded a war drum with terrifying rhythm, boom, 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 like an ancient galley slave ship. The rowers, Sanji, Pudding, Jem, Chopper, Kobe, Kaya, Marianne, and Usopp, were chained loosely, for drama, to their oars, rowing furiously with tears streaming down their faces. "Captain, help," Usopp wailed. "Yes, she's a nightmare," Kaya cried, half sobbing. Crack. Yamato's whip struck the air. "No talking. Row faster." Richie increased the tempo of the drum, roaring with enthusiasm. Luffy and Nami stood frozen at the doorway, jaws slack. "Should we do something?" Nami asked weakly. Hancock glanced up from her drink, perfectly calm. "What? I want to reach Amazon Lily as fast as possible." She took another dainty sip, while the sound of the whip and the booming drum echoed across the calm belt like some nightmarish galley of war. Luffy and Nami exchanged a look, then both just slumped against the wall, defeated. "We'll let this play out," Luffy muttered. Nami nodded. "Yeah, I don't get paid enough to stop that." At last, the calm waters gave way to towering cliffs of green. The shadow sorrow slipped into the great jungle entrance of the calm belt island. The trees parted like gates, vines hanging low, the cries of exotic birds echoing through the canopy. 10 minutes later, the jungle opened into a vast bay, and there it was. Amazon Lily. The city rose like a jungle kingdom carved into the cliffs, bridges of wood and stone, huts and towers draped in flowers, banners fluttering in the wind. And waiting on the docks and balconies were hundreds of Amazons, all beautiful, all fierce, weapons in hand but smiles on their faces. The air erupted in cheers. "Luffy, Hancock, Yamato, you came back. The wedding is finally happening. Our Empress returns with her Dragon King." Drums pounded. Trumpets blared. Flower petals rained down like confetti as the shadow sorrow glided toward the main pier. Sanji, standing at the railing, saw them, hundreds of stunning warrior women screaming in joy, waving, their beauty overwhelming. He dropped to his knees, hands clasped like a priest at an altar, eyes wide with tears of reverence. Thank you, merciful God, for allowing this lonely mortal to witness paradise." But instead of exploding into nosebleeds and passing out like the Sanji of old, his voice was calm. Serene. Like a monk who had finally found enlightenment. The crew all stared at him. Zoro squinted suspiciously. "Huh, guess the therapy worked." Jem smirked. "Or I just blew up the part of his brain that handled self-control." Pudding sipped her tea smugly. "Either way, he's cured." Sanji folded his hands and whispered again, eyes shining like he'd found salvation. "Paradise, real, beautiful, living paradise." Behind him, Luffy grinned wide, clapping Yamato on the back. "Ha ha ha, we're here." Hancock stood tall at the bow, her hair flowing in the wind, eyes sparkling as she gazed at her homeland. "Yes," she whispered, lips curving into a proud smile. "Amazon Lily, the wedding, begins." The shadow sorrow slid gracefully against the great wooden pier, ropes tossed, sails tied. A roar of cheers shook the jungle city as the crew disembarked. Waiting at the front of the Kuja army were 3 figures of honor. Marigold, towering and smiling with tears in her eyes. Elder Nyan, cane tapping against the wood, scowl already in place. And standing proud in regal robes, Boa Sandersonia, the current empress and warlord of the sea. The moment Hancock stepped off the ship, her 2 sisters lunged forward, pulling her into a crushing embrace. "Hancock," Marigold sobbed. "Sister, you're finally home," Sandersonia whispered, her usually stern eyes soft with warmth. The 3 sisters clung together while the Amazons clapped and cheered. Behind them, Yamato grinned wide. "Man, this place is lively." Luffy just smiled, proud and calm. When Hancock pulled away, she slipped her hand into Luffy's. The crowd went silent as he stepped forward. Hancock raised her chin proudly. "Amazon Lily. I return with my fiancé, Monkey D. Luffy, the Shadow Dragon." The Amazons screamed in joy, some fainting, others chanting, "Dragon King! Dragon King!" But the true shock came when Hancock gestured to her other side, where Nami stood nervously wringing her hands. "And, there is one more." Hancock's voice softened. "Nami. Our wife-to-be. We are marrying her as well." The dock went dead silent. Even the jungle birds stopped chirping. Elder Nyan blinked, her jaw dropping. Marigold and Sandersonia froze, eyes bulging in disbelief. Luffy beamed proudly. "Everyone, this is Nami. And Nami," he pointed at Gloriosa. This is your grandma. Nami's face went white. My what? She stared at Gloriosa in horror. That means, I'll look like that when I get old. Every Amazon gasped. The shadow dragon pirates covered their mouths in shock. Gloriosa's face turned red with fury, her cane shaking. How dare you talk that way to your grandmother? She smacked the ground so hard the dock cracked. Nami froze, sweating bullets. I didn't mean it like that. The Amazons burst into laughter, rolling on the ground. Even Zoro had to cover his grin, and Usopp wheezed. Luffy just stood there laughing, holding his stomach. Ha 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 ha. Jackpot, Nami. You're already part of the family. As the laughter and chaos of the docks calmed, Nami stood frozen, her face pale. Slowly, realization began to dawn. She turned toward Gloriosa, her voice trembling. Wait, are you saying, you're really, my blood relative? The old empress's sharp eyes softened. She gripped her cane tight, then nodded. Yes, child, I am your grandmother. And now, you deserve the truth. The Amazons hushed, forming a silent circle. Even the shadow dragon pirates leaned in. Gloriosa closed her eyes and began. Your mother, my daughter, was a proud Kuja warrior. Strong, beautiful, fearless. But unlike her sisters, she chose the path of her heart. She fell in love with a man, not a pirate, not a warrior, just a simple man from a quiet island. They were happy together. Her cane tapped against the wood, voice shaking with memory. But the world government discovered her identity. Marines came in force. He hid her, fought to protect her, but was slain before her eyes, while she carried you in her belly. Gasps rippled through the Amazons. Nami's lips quivered, tears already building. When she gave birth, she was weak. Too weak. She placed you in my arms, and with her final breath, begged me to keep you safe. Gloriosa's face hardened with fury, her voice like thunder. And I went on a killing spree. The Marines paid dearly for what they had done. I cut down every last one I could find. But my daughter was gone. I was still empress then, after Shaki abdicated to live with that man, Rayleigh, but I could not raise you. The world was hunting us. So during a raid, I made a choice. Her eyes turned watery as she stared at Nami. I saw a little girl on that ship. Blue hair, scared but brave. I handed you to her, and told her to take care of you. That girl was Nojiko. Nami's knees went weak. She covered her mouth. So, that's how Nojiko found me. Gloriosa nodded. Yes. And I prayed you would grow strong, even if far from Amazon Lily. Nami's tears fell freely now. She took a shaky breath, then whispered. I did, I found a home. Belmere, Nojiko, the village, they raised me. I wasn't alone. For the first time in years, a genuine smile crossed Gloriosa's stern face. Then my daughter's wish was fulfilled. But Nami's expression darkened. She see our voice trembling with rage. Grandma, there's something else you need to know. About what happened after, about Arlong. She told Gloriosa everything. About the betrayal. The years of slavery. The stolen money. The tattoo that marked her shame. By the time she finished, Gloriosa's hands were shaking with fury. Her cane cracked against the dock like a thunderclap. Her eyes blazed with pure hate. Arlong, that filthy fish dog, he dared to lay hands on my granddaughter. The Amazons erupted in outrage, their voices rising like a war cry. Unforgivable. Kill him. No one harms the family of the Kuja. The shadow dragon pirates looked at each other nervously as the entire island of warriors raged like a storm. And Nami, tears streaming but a small smile on her lips, whispered to herself. So I really wasn't alone. Not then, not now. The Amazons were still roaring for vengeance when Nami lifted her hand and wiped her tears. Her voice rang clear. Grandma, don't bother. Everyone went silent. Nami's eyes hardened as she stepped forward. I already killed Arlong. With his own blade. I sliced his head off, and I don't regret it for a second. Gasps rippled through the Amazons. Even Gloriosa froze. And then, before their eyes, Nami's body shifted, fur rippling, muscles sharpening, her claws gleaming black as she transformed into her Black Panther hybrid form. Gloriosa's jaw dropped. My granddaughter, Azone. By the gods. Hancock smirked proudly from Luffy's side, but then tilted her head curiously. By the way, Gloriosa, if you're Nami's grandmother, who is her grandfather? The air turned heavy. Gloriosa's face twisted, and she suddenly barked. No, that is something I will not say. That is my shame. Forget it. Nami blinked. But, Grandma, no. Gloriosa's cane cracked against the dock, silencing everyone. Her voice trembled. That name will never be spoken. The silence hung, thick and uneasy. But then Gloriosa quickly changed subject, as if tearing the memory from the air. Oh. Before I forget, your friends arrived here 2 days ago. Friends? Luffy asked, puzzled. But before he could continue, Pudding shot upright, eyes wide, excitement bursting out of her like fireworks. You mean, my big brother and sisters? Sandersonia nodded gravely. If you were referring to Katakuri, Brûlé, and Smoothie, then yes. The dock filled with gasps. And then a calm, deep voice rolled across the bay. Nice to see you too, little sis. Everyone turned. Standing at the edge of the pier, 3 towering figures approached. Katakuri, tall, stoic, scarf pulled low, his trident slung over his shoulder. Smoothie, towering and elegant, blade gleaming on her back. Brûlé, hunched but smiling warmly, eyes soft for once. Pudding's lip trembled, tears filling her eyes. Big brother, big sisters. She ran forward without hesitation, throwing her arms around Katakuri's waist. He stiffened at first, then placed a gentle hand on her head. Brûlé wheezed a laugh, hugging her tightly. We finally found you, Pudding. Smoothie's voice was quiet but strong. You're safe now. And so are we. The Shadow Dragon pirates and Amazons watched in stunned silence. Katakuri raised his head, eyes meeting Luffy's across the dock. We are no longer Charlotte's children. We're runaways. Outcasts. Just like her. He glanced down at Pudding, his voice softer. And we came to stand with our little sister. Amazon Lily's banquet hall overflowed with music, dancing, and laughter. Torches blazed, meat sizzled, sake and fruit wine flowed like rivers. The Kuja warriors and the Shadow Dragon pirates feasted side by side, their cheers shaking the jungle canopy. At the head table sat Luffy, Hancock, Nami, Yamato, Katakuri, Smoothie, Brûlé, Pudding, and the sisters Marigold and Sandersonia. Even Elder Nyan sat grumpily with a cup of wine, muttering under her breath but clearly enjoying herself. Sanji moved like lightning between the tables, serving platters with perfect grace. Sweat dripped down his face, but his zen-like therapy discipline held. He whispered under his breath, calm as ever. Paradise must be maintained, paradise must be fed. Everything was perfect. Until Sandersonia suddenly froze mid-bite, her eyes widening. Oh shit. The entire table turned toward her. What's wrong? Yamato asked, gnawing a bone. Sandersonia cursed under her breath. How could I forget? Katakuri's sharp voice cut in, low and serious. She told us just before we came here. Sandersonia nodded gravely. Something happened, something not in the papers. We warlords were informed and sworn to secrecy. The hall hushed. Even the Kuja stopped eating, listening. Luffy leaned forward, eyes narrowed. What is it? Sandersonia swallowed hard, then said the words. There's been an escape, from Impel Down. The table shook. Luffy, Hancock, Nami, Yamato, Kuro, Zoro, and especially Tashigi, all went pale. Tashigi slammed her hands on the table. That prison is supposed to be impenetrable. Who escaped? Sandersonia's voice dropped to a whisper. A level 6 convict, Shiki the Golden Lion. The hall erupted in chaos. Plates clattered, voices rose in fear. Gloriosa shot to her feet, cane trembling. What? Why didn't you tell me this before, you dumb girl? No, not him, anyone but him. Her hands shook violently, memories flooding her eyes. He can't be free, not Shiki. Even the Amazons looked uneasy, whispers racing through the hall. Katakuri's calm voice cut through like a blade. And it gets worse. Every eye turned to him. He met Luffy's gaze directly. I believe Mama knows where we are. Empress Sandersonia received a message from Shanks this morning. He said Big Mom's flagship was sighted near Sabayati. The hall froze. Luffy's jaw tightened. Shit. If those two joined forces, we're in trouble. The crew exchanged nervous looks. Zoro rested his hand on his swords. Tashigi whispered, 2 legends together, we'd be crushed. But Luffy's face slowly broke into a grin. A dangerous grin. But this could be useful. Hancock tilted her head. How, my love? Luffy's eyes gleamed like fire. Shiki is a relic, a ghost of a dead era. Forgotten by the world, but his fruit. Hancock's lips curved into a smile, understanding dawning. Oh, I see. Nami shivered, whispering under her breath. Only Luffy would see opportunity in a nightmare. The joyous air of the feast had drained away. Only the crackling of torches filled the silence as Gloriosa rose slowly to her feet. Her eyes, once sharp with fury, now burned with memory. I know Shiki very well, she said, her voice low and grave. I fought beside him in the Age of Rocks. He was reckless, arrogant, but his strength was undeniable. He is dangerous beyond words. God forbid that he and that gluttonous hag, Big Mom, should ever meet, and worse, join forces. The room grew tense. Nami's fists clenched under the table. She turned toward Luffy, her voice trembling. But, why are you so interested in his fruit, dear? Luffy leaned back in his chair, shadows flickering across his face as he smiled. The float fruit. What it can do. Gasps rippled. Luffy leaned forward, eyes burning with ambition. If I can get that fruit, and give it to someone in our crew, it changes everything. Flying ships. Floating fortresses. Entire fleets crushed under falling islands. Hancock's eyes glowed with pride, while Yamato grinned like a wolf. Luffy's voice hardened. And besides, it's time we get that old hag off our backs for good. He turned his gaze toward Katakuri, Smoothie, Brulee, and Pudding. His tone was calm but heavy. And if it comes to that, you know what must be done. The three siblings stiffened. Katakuri's jaw tightened, but he nodded. We understand. She may be our mother, but she never acted like one. She treated us as tools. As dirt. If you're asking if we would deliver the final blow, then yes. I would. Smoothie closed her eyes and Brulee's voice cracked, but she whispered, me too. Tears rolled down Pudding's cheeks as she nodded, trembling. Yes, even Mama, she doesn't deserve to live. Sanji, sitting beside her, gently took her hand in his own. His calm touch gave her strength. She squeezed back, whispering thanks. The hall was silent. The decision hung heavy in the air. Then Katakuri added, his voice steel. But her fruit, the Soru no Mi, it is too dangerous to be left unclaimed. We can't allow it to return to the wild. The crew stiffened. Vivi, wide-eyed, raised her hand. Wait, how do you harvest a devil fruit? Hancock leaned forward, explaining in her regal tone. It is simple. When a fruit user dies, their devil fruit reincarnates into the nearest plain fruit. That's why, when we killed Enel, his Guro no Mi reappeared instantly inside the nearest papaya, and Kaya ate it. Gasps circled the table again as Vivi covered her mouth. So it's that direct. Luffy smirked and leaned back. Yeah, which is why I came prepared. He reached under the table and dropped a small sack onto the wood. It spilled open. Inside were a dozen fresh fruits. Apples, bananas, papayas, pears. When Hancock and I went back up to Skypia, Luffy said with a grin, I made sure to stockpile supplies. His eyes glowed dangerously. When the time comes, those relics won't be wasted. The calm belt stretched endlessly, a mirror of glass and silence. Sea kings slumbered in the depths below, their shapes vast shadows beneath the surface, but none dared rise. They felt something darker prowling the waves. At the heart of that silence, the flagship of the Charlotte family, the Queen Mama Chanter, cut across the still waters, its massive hull creaking like a living beast. On the deck, Big Mom herself stood at the prow, hands gripping the railing so tight the wood splintered. Her wild hair whipped in the windless air, her wide eyes staring across the horizon. Her rage had cooled. Now, calculation simmered. She muttered, voice low and bitter. Monkey D. Luffy, the Shadow Dragon. My traitorous daughters. That snake Hancock. And those damned Kuja bitches. All gathered in Amazon Lily. She licked her lips, though the hunger was not for sweets but for power. They say even that witch Gloriosa still lives. The same hag who defied Rox himself. HMPH. And if Lilith is there. Her body shivered involuntarily. For a woman who feared nothing, that name alone chilled her spine. The she-devil, the only woman who ever made me taste fear. If that whore's brat and her dragon son stand together, this won't be easy. But. Her grin split wide, teeth glinting like blades. I'm a Yonko. If I turn tail now, I'll look weak. Mama can't ever look weak. The deck creaked as Katakori's absence weighed on her heart, but she crushed the thought like a bug. She had lost children before, she would lose them again. No one abandoned Mama and lived. Smoothie, brulee, pudding, she hissed, spittle flying. I'll drag you all back in chains. And if Luffy tries to stop me. She clenched her fist, the air rippling with raw power. I'll tear that dragon apart. The calm belt seemed to darken around her, and then a shadow rose. The horizon swelled unnaturally, waves lifting though there was no wind. A floating mass loomed over the flagship, blotting out the sun. An island, a fortress of stone and jungle, floating in the sky. Gasps tore through the crew. A flying island. What is this madness? Big Mom's eyes narrowed. Her instincts recognized it instantly. Number. It can't be. The floating rock shifted, descending. From the cliffs and ruins above, a ragged flag unfurled, painted with a roaring lion. A mocking laugh echoed across the sea. Yahahahaha. The sound alone made veterans tremble. Landing on the Queen Mama chanter's deck in a swirl of dust and debris was a man out of legend. Tall, golden-maned, 2 massive swords strapped to his sides, and clumsy crude steering wheels grafted into the stumps of his ankles. Shiki the Golden Lion. The crew staggered back in disbelief. It's impossible, he was locked in level 6. This can't be real. Big Mom only smirked, towering over the legend with no fear. Shiki, you old ghost. I thought you'd rotted in Impel Down. Shiki's grin was all teeth. His mane billowed like a lion's in the phantom wind. Impel Down couldn't hold me forever. Rocks, era isn't done yet. And you, Charlotte, still chasing scraps, are ya? A flicker of memory crossed both their faces. The Rocks pirates, a nightmare crew that had once shaken the world. Kaido, Whitebeard, Linlin, Shiki. Monsters under rocks, flag. Big Mom's grin widened, madness sparkling in her eyes. So, what's your game, Golden Lion? Shiki spread his arms wide, the sea groaning beneath the weight of the island above. My game. Simple. I want to remind the world that Shiki lives. And I want payback. The government tried to bury me. I'll bury their precious seas instead. He leaned close, his grin sharp. And I hear you've got a problem with a certain brat named Luffy. Big Mom's teeth gnashed, her fists trembling. That little dragon, he's gathered a crew too dangerous to ignore. Hancock. Yamato. My own children betraying me. And behind him, Dragon, Shanks, Whitebeard's shadow, and Lilith's blood. Shiki barked out a laugh. Sounds fun. He slammed one sword into the deck, the wood groaning. You want him dead. I want chaos. Let's make a deal. You help me crush the shadow dragon and his whores. He pointed to the east, his golden mane whipping in phantom wind. And I'll help you destroy East Blue. The weak little sea that birthed Garp, Roger, and now this brat. Imagine it, Linlin, villages burned, seas swallowed, islands floating just to fall like bombs. We'll erase his roots. Silence fell over the deck. Even Big Mom's children exchanged uneasy glances. The sheer audacity of the plan was insane. But then, Big Mom's laugh split the calm belt. Mama mama mama. Her voice thundered like a cannon, her shadow stretching huge across the deck. You're mad, Shiki. But I like it. Her grin was monstrous, eyes gleaming with cruel delight. Together, we'll crush the brat, butcher his lovers, and burn East Blue to ash. And when it's done, she licked her lips, voice dripping with hunger. I'll take his soul myself. The crew shivered. The sea seemed to recoil. And as the Queen Mama chanter sailed forward beneath the looming shadow of Shiki's floating island, 2 legends of the old era sealed a pact. A pact that would drag the world into hell. The Queen Mama chanter's captain's quarters glowed dimly, lantern light flickering over maps, half-eaten sweets, and piles of marine files. The air reeked of sugar and salt, but it was thick with something darker, history clawing its way back to the surface. At the table sat Big Mom and Shiki the Golden Lion. Between them lay a stack of fresh wanted posters. The ink was still sharp, the paper crisp. Names, faces, and bounties stared back at them, the Shadow Dragon pirates. Shiki plucked the top sheet with his claw-like nails, squinting at the face that grinned back. Monkey D. Luffy, Shadow Dragon. 850 million, EH. TCH. A rookie pulling numbers like that. Big Mom chuckled, voice like rolling thunder. Don't underestimate him, Shiki. He's not just some brat. He's got all 3 haki, Rokushiki, two swords, and that cursed zone of his, the serpent fruit, model, dragon of darkness and chaos. Shiki snorted, tossing the poster down. Sounds flashy. But power alone don't make a king. Big Mom leaned forward, her massive hands slamming the table. He's not alone. That snake Hancock, Gorgon Queen Zone, Venom and Stone in one. Yamato, Kaido's own spawn, wielding Conqueror's haki like a whip. Nami with her Panther Zone. Vivi, Zoro, Robin, that Thunder Girl Kaya, even my traitorous brats Katakuri and Smoothie have bent knee to him. They're more dangerous together than Rock's crew ever was. For a moment, the Golden Lion's grin faltered. A flicker of unease cut through his arrogance. Then he barked a laugh, sharp and defiant. Yahaha, you're telling me this pup has turned your precious children against you? Pathetic, Linlin. A real captain keeps his dogs on a leash. Big Mom's glare froze him, but only for a second. Then she leaned back, voice low. You'd be wise not to take him lightly. The world's already whispering that he's the storm that'll shatter the balance. And worse still. Her grin sharpened into something cruel. His mother is Lilith. The air seemed to crackle at the name. Shiki's golden mane stilled, his wild eyes narrowing. Lilith. Big Mom smirked, savoring the memory. You remember her. 16 years old, fresh on Roger's crew, swinging that black blade of hers like a devil. Storm fruit raging in her veins. You thought she was just a brat. And she carved you up so bad, Roger himself laughed. Called you a weakling. The memory struck like a blade. For a heartbeat, Shiki's grin vanished, his teeth grinding. He could hear Roger's booming laughter, the mocking jeers of that crew, the sting of humiliation as a girl barely grown made him bleed. But then he laughed. A deep, booming, manic laugh that shook the room. Yahahaha. So that's it. The shadow dragon is her whelp. Lilith's boy. The son of the bitch who made me a joke to the seas. His swords them against the floor. His grin split wider, eyes burning with madness. Perfect. I'll take his head, Linlin. And when I do, it won't just be his blood I'm spilling. It'll be revenge. Revenge on the she-devil, on Roger's ghost, on everyone who dared laugh at Shiki the Golden Lion. Big Mom's laughter joined his, a hideous chorus that filled the cabin. Mama mama mama. Then we're agreed. We'll crush the shadow dragon, slaughter his brides, and break Amazon Lily in two. And if Lilith shows her face. She leaned close, eyes blazing. We finish it. The lantern light flickered, throwing monstrous shadows across the walls. Two relics of the old era, bound by spite and hunger, sealed their pact in madness. The calm belt itself seemed to recoil, as if the sea remembered the nightmare of rocks and feared its return. Big Mom's thunderous laugh and Shiki's mad roar were cut short by an unexpected sound. Clap, clap, clap. The sharp rhythm echoed across the deck. Both froze, eyes snapping upward. Perched casually atop the Queen Mama chanter's tallest mast, her long black cloak rippling like a storm cloud, sat Lilith. The she-devil herself. A smile played across her lips, but her eyes glowed with the cold gleam of a predator. Well, she purred, her voice carrying unnaturally across the calm belt. What do we have here? On my way to my son's wedding, and fate drops me into the company of the candy-guzzling fat-ass Yonko, and the golden idiot. Big Mom's jaw locked, teeth grinding. Shiki's face turned crimson. You, he bellowed, drawing his swords. I'll cut you down where you stand, bitch. But before he could leap, Lilith lazily raised one hand. The sea itself trembled, clouds above boiling with storm light. The pressure in the air was suffocating. Don't mistake me, Golden Lion. I didn't come here to fight. Not yet. I came to give you both a warning. Her smile vanished, leaving her eyes sharp as blades. If either of you dares to ruin my son's wedding, to his two brides, you'll find I'm the least of your problems. Big Mom snarled. What nonsense are you spouting, whore? Lilith only laughed. Her form shimmered, dissolving into storm winds. In a blink she reappeared on the deck, standing between them, twin posters in her hand. She flicked them down onto the table, Nami and Boa Hancock. She traced a finger over the faces. You two fools still haven't figured it out. Look closely. Did they remind you of no one? Big Mom's eyes narrowed. Enough games, Lilith. Oh, come now, Linlin, Lilith mocked, smirk curling. You of all people should know. Once, you were the most beautiful woman alive. Until they came along. One became a legend among rocks. The other. Her eyes slid to Hancock's poster, smile wicked. Hancock's mother was none other than Shikuyaku. Shiki, the former empress of Amazon Lily. And her father. None other than Silver's Rayleigh, the Dark King. The words hit like cannon fire. Shiki's jaw went slack, Big Mom's pupils shrank. In Nami, Lilith's voice dropped, almost tender. She lifted the second poster high. Her blood runs deeper than you know. Gloriosa's granddaughter. And her grandfather. Her grin widened, cruel and triumphant. Was none other than Rox D. Zebek. Shiki staggered back, his swords trembling in his grip. No, it can't, she never. Lilith leaned close, whispering like a storm. Oh, but she was. Which means Nami's full name is Rox D. Nami. The granddaughter of your old captain. Big Mom's rage boiled over, her roar shaking the timbers of the ship. What? Lilith only laughed, her storm aura exploding outward. The mast creaked, the sea churned, and for a heartbeat both Shiki and Big Mom could only stare. Play your games if you want, she hissed. But remember this, my son isn't just Roger's heir, or Dragon's boy, or my flesh and blood. He's tied to every storm this world has ever feared. And if you two dare to touch him. Lightning cracked behind her, the mast splitting from the force. I'll tear your souls apart myself. With that, her body dissolved into the storm, vanishing into the sky with the sound of thunder. Silence blanketed the deck. Big Mom's teeth gnashed in fury. Shiki's fist shook, veins bulging. But beneath the rage, unease crept into their bones. The bloodlines of the Shadow Dragon pirates weren't just dangerous. They were cursed. Amazon Lily was alive with celebration. Lanterns strung between towering trees lit the night, drums thundered, and the Kuja warriors sang songs of love and battle. The palace was draped in flowers, silk, and banners. In the heart of it all, Luffy, Hancock, and Nami sat together, the center of the storm, their faces flushed with joy and embarrassment as the women of the island cheered them on. But in the shadows, away from the laughter, the air shifted. A whisper of thunder, a pulse of storm wind, Lilith appeared at the edge of Gloriosa's private garden. Her black cloak swirled around her, eyes glinting sharp as knives. Gloriosa, the elder empress, stiffened the moment she saw her. You, she hissed. Where have you been? Lilith smiled faintly, but there was no warmth in it. Oh, just bumped into a pair of old acquaintances. Shiki the Golden Lion and Charlotte Linlin. Funny how fate keeps throwing us back together. Gloriosa froze, her wrinkled hands trembling. You what? She snapped, her voice rising. Lilith leaned close, lips almost brushing the old woman's ear. Her whisper was soft, but it carried the weight of thunder. I told them. For a moment, Gloriosa's face drained of color. Then she exploded. You did what? She shrieked, stomping her cane so hard it cracked the stone. Are you crazy? I told you that in confidence. Lilith only smirked, her eyes flashing with that same storm fire she had shown Shiki and Big Mom. Relax, old hag. Secrets rot when kept too long. Better they choke on the truth now than choke us later. Gloriosa's hands shook. She knew exactly what Lilith had revealed. The names, the bloodlines, the connections that could either crown Luffy king of the seas, or bring every monster of the old era down upon him. Gloriosa's cane cracked against the stone again, her voice shrill with fury. Damn you, Lilith. Of all the people you could have run that mouth to, you blather who Nami's grandfather was to those two. To Big Mom and Shiki of all monsters. The words rang like cannon fire. Lilith's smirk never faltered. Oh, come now. You really think you could bury that forever? You know as well as I do, truth has teeth. It always finds a way to bite. But before Gloriosa could retort, another voice cut in. Nami. Her face pale, her voice trembling but sharp as a whip. Gloriosa, what are you talking about? The elder froze, realizing too late that the outburst had echoed far beyond the garden. The crew had gathered, Luffy, Hancock, Yamato, Robin, Vivi, Zoro, Sanji, Usopp, Kaya, Chopper, the Charlotte's Katakuri, Smoothie, and Brûlé, and dozens of Kuja warriors. All had heard. Nami's eyes burned as she stepped forward. You've been hiding something. About me. About my family. Tell me. Now. Even Hancock, usually the picture of calm, shifted uncomfortably, suspicion flashing in her eyes. Yamato's jaw clenched, knuckles white. Luffy's smile was gone, replaced by confusion and dread. The garden was silent but for the crackle of storm energy still lingering around Lilith. Gloriosa's wrinkled face twisted, torn between fury and fear. She pointed her cane at Lilith, voice breaking. "This is your fault. You never should have." "Enough," Nami snapped, tears threatening at the edges of her eyes. "If you really care about me, you'll stop lying. Tell me who he was. Tell me who my grandfather is." Gloriosa's shoulders sagged. The weight of decades crashed down upon her. She closed her eyes, shaking her head. "You don't know what you're asking, girl. The name alone could bring the world crashing down on us all." Nami's fists clenched. "Then let it crash. I'm not living in the dark anymore." The crew leaned forward, hair throats. Finally, Gloriosa raised her head, her voice hoarse but steady. "Your grandfather was Rox D. Zebek." Gasps tore through the crowd. Hancock's composure shattered, her hand flying to her mouth. Yamato staggered back, wide-eyed. Luffy's face drained of color, his breath caught in his throat. Katakuri and Smoothie stiffened, exchanging glances filled with dread. Even Robin's eyes widened, knowledge clashing with disbelief. The Kuja warriors fell to their knees, whispering, "Rox, Rox," in terror. And Nami froze. The weight of the name pressed on her like the sea itself, crushing and suffocating. Her lips trembled as she whispered, I'm the granddaughter of the man who tried to destroy the world." The garden was still shaking with the shock of Nami's lineage when Gloriosa's fury boiled over. Her cane slammed into the stone, voice raw with rage. "And what about you, Lilith?" she screamed, her eyes blazing. The girl who, at 6 years old, was destined to become a god knight. And when the God Valley massacre came, what did you do? You ran. You stole your infant brother and joined Roger's crew. The crew froze. Lilith's smirk twisted into a cold scoff. "Oh, please. Don't act like you're telling them something they don't know. Luffy's already aware." She turned, her storm-bright eyes settling on her son. "Aren't you, boy?" Luffy nodded firmly, his expression hard. "Yeah, she told me. I told Hancock too. I was going to tell the rest of you soon, but you ruined it, Gloriosa." The crew's shock deepened, whispers rippling like wildfire. "God Knight. Celestial dragon blood. No way, Luffy." Even Yamato, normally unshakable, stared with her mouth open. Sanji dropped his cigarette. Zoro's hand went to his swords. Robin's eyes sharpened with the hunger of a historian faced with the greatest revelation of her life. Lilith stepped forward, her voice like rolling thunder. "Make no mistake, Luffy is no celestial. He is my son, not theirs. I took him. I took Shanks. I fled my father's poisoned world before it could chain us." Gasps rippled again. Luffy clenched his fists, stepping in front of his crew, his voice low but steady. "I'm not a celestial. I don't care about gods, knights, or blood. I'm me. Monkey D. Luffy. The Shadow Dragon. And I'll be king of the pirates." His words hit like a cannon blast, silencing the garden. For a moment, all anyone could do was stare. The garden was thick with silence, all eyes fixed on Nami, still trembling from Gloriosa's outburst. Lilith's presence loomed like a storm cloud, her gaze fixed on her son's crew. She stepped closer to Nami, placing a steadying hand on her shoulder. "Listen well, girl. What Gloriosa spilled cannot spread. Not yet. If the world knew you carried the blood of Rox D. Zebek, they'd move faster than even I could stop. The government, the Marines, the Holy Knights, they'd descend on you like vultures." Her voice dropped lower, sharp as a blade. "Keep it buried for now. Let them shake in fear when the truth comes out at the right time. The day those 5 idiots in Mary Geoise realize that the blood of Rox, Silver's Rayleigh, and St. Garling married into one line." She smirked, the stormlight in her eyes flaring. "They'll shit themselves." Nami's breath hitched, but she nodded firmly. "I understand." Beside her, Luffy and Hancock both nodded in unison. They would guard the secret, for now. The rest of the crew, however, was left stunned. "The blood of, who?" Usopp squeaked. "Rayleigh. Rox. Garling." Sanji shouted, eyes bulging. Even Zoro's grip tightened on his swords, his usually stoic expression cracking. Confusion rippled until Hancock herself stepped forward, raising her chin proudly. Her tone was calm, but her words were bombs. "Oh, right. I suppose it's time you all knew. Silver's Rayleigh is my father. Shikuyaku is my mother. The crew erupted. The Dark King. Shaky. Vivi's hands flew to her mouth in shock. Kaya staggered. Even Robin's composed mask shattered, her eyes wide with disbelief. Lilith laughed softly, the sound like thunder rolling across the horizon. You see, you're not just a crew. You're a storm of bloodlines, legacies, and powers this world has tried to bury. That's why fate keeps circling you. Why every Yonko, admiral, and world noble has their eyes locked on your sails. She looked to Luffy, Hancock, and Nami, the storm at the center. Your wedding isn't just love. It's war. And it will shake the seas. The throne room of Amazon Lily was suffocating in silence. The words Lilith had spoken still hung in the air like a curse. Rock's D. Zebek's blood, Rayleigh's and Shikuyaku's child, and Luffy's own ties to the celestial line. Nami sat frozen, her claws half extended, eyes wide and shimmering with disbelief. Her chest rose and fell in rapid bursts. Around her, the crew exchanged nervous glances. Zoro's hand was already on his swords, though even he didn't know who he was preparing to fight: Lilith, fate itself, or the demons rising inside Nami. Granddaughter of rocks, whispered Robin, her calm voice faltering for the first time. History truly repeats itself. Oi, don't say it like that. Sanji snapped, though his cigarette trembled between his fingers. Nami-san is Nami-san. No matter whose blood runs in her veins. Vivi's eyes welled up. Nami, you're still our friend, our family. None of this changes that. But Nami's body shook. She stood abruptly, stumbling backwards as if the walls of the palace were collapsing in on her. I'm not, she choked, her panther eyes glowing faintly. I'm not him. I'm not, Rocks. Nami. Hancock's voice rang sharp, commanding, but gentle. She rose from Luffy's side and crossed the chamber in long strides, cupping Nami's face in both hands. Listen to me, beloved. Blood does not dictate who you are. Your will does. Behind her, Luffy stumbled over, panic in his voice. Yeah, Nami, don't even think that crap. You're you. You're my navigator, my future wife. His words came out raw, boyish, yet burning with honesty. Nami's lips trembled. She looked at them both, the captain she had followed into madness, and the vice-captain she had once feared, now both clutching her like lifelines. Their warmth steadied her. Lilith, leaning back in her seat with an almost bored expression, broke the moment with a scoff. Pathetic. If you're so worried, I could end this little farce before it begins. Her crimson eyes glowed as the air around her warped like heat waves. One thought, one gesture, and I erase Shiki and Linlin before they even reach these shores. The calm belt itself would shatter under my will. The floor shook faintly as her power bled into the room. Even the Kuja warriors gasped, some dropping their weapons instinctively. No! Luffy and Hancock shouted in unison. They spun toward her, desperation painted across their faces. Don't you dare! Luffy barked, his fists clenched so tight his knuckles cracked. That's our fight, not yours. Hancock's voice shook, a rare crack in her unshakable pride. If you unleash your full power, there will be no battlefield left, no world left to protect. Please, Lilith, don't take this from us. Lilith tilted her head, amused by their desperation. Spoilsports, she muttered, rolling her eyes like a queen denied her entertainment. You beg for the right to fight, yet tremble at the weight of your enemies. Do you truly think you can survive without me? Nami's hands tightened around Luffy's and Hancock's, her shaking subsiding. For the first time since the revelation, her voice steadied, low but firm. Yes, we can. Because we have to. Lilith's smirk widened. Then show me, granddaughter of rocks. Show me the storm you were born to unleash. Nami's chest rose and fell, each breath heavy with anger, fear, and something deeper. Her grip on Luffy and Hancock's hands trembled, but then, slowly, stilled. The air shifted. At first, it was just the faint crackle of static, like a storm gathering far on the horizon. Then the palace walls groaned, wind howling in from nowhere. Torches flickered violently, their flames bending toward her as if drawn to her will. Nami, Luffy whispered, eyes wide. He'd felt this before, Kaido, Shanks, his own mother. But this was different. Robin's hands flew to her mouth. Impossible, she's. A sudden boom echoed through the chamber as Nami's aura exploded outward. Black and violet lightning arced across the room, ripping cracks through the marble floor. Kuja warriors dropped like flies, unconscious in an instant, while others staggered back, too weak to stand in the torrent of her spirit. That's Conqueror's Haki. Vivi gasped, shielding her face from the violent winds. Zoro clenched his teeth, sweat dripping down his brow, but a grin tugged at his lips. Hey, I knew you had it in you. Sanji's cigarette flew from his mouth, extinguished midair. Nami Swan, you're terrifyingly beautiful. But Nami wasn't hearing them. Her eyes glowed golden, slitted like the panther within. Tears streaked down her face as she shouted. I am not rocks. I am Nami, navigator of the Shadow Dragon pirates, and I'll never let my family be destroyed again. The final burst of her will cracked the ceiling above, showering dust and broken stone as her conqueror's haki surged like a tidal wave. Outside, the skies above Amazon Lily darkened, thunder rolling despite no storm clouds being present. Lilith's laughter rang through the chaos, rich and cold. Yes, that is the storm of rocks, blood. That is the storm I wanted to see. But Hancock pulled Nami close, pressing her forehead to hers. No, that is not rocks, storm. That is ours. Luffy, eyes blazing with pride, wrapped his arms around them both. Our navigator, our wife. That's all you are, and all you'll ever need to be. Nami's aura slowly dimmed, the lightning fading but leaving the chamber scarred and smoking. Half the Kuja guard lay unconscious, the others staring at her with awe and fear. And then, a deafening horn blared from the coast. A scout stumbled into the throne room, blood on her lips. Empress. Captain. A flying island, heading straight for us. And Big Mom's fleet beneath it. The crew's faces hardened instantly. Luffy's smile widened, dark and fierce. The old era's here, he muttered. Guess it's time we show them the new one. The throne room doors slammed open again, the roar of horns and crashing waves rolling inside. The air itself grew heavy, thick with the oppressive presence of Tuyonko. Outside, the sky had gone black. Shiki's floating island loomed like a second moon, blotting out the sun. Jagged peaks of rock and ancient ruins hovered unnaturally above the calm belt, casting long shadows across the seas. Beneath it, Big Mom's fleet stretched across the horizon, dozens of monstrous ships bristling with cannons, homies cackling with hunger. Linlin and Shiki, together, Robin muttered, horror flickering across her face. This is the kind of alliance that destroys eras. They picked the wrong damn island, Yamato growled, hefting her kanabo onto her shoulder. Luffy strode forward, no hesitation, no fear. His grin was wide, teeth bared, his aura pulsing. Good. I was getting bored. Let's go. The call to arms. Amazon Lily erupted with activity. Kuja warriors rushed to the walls, bows strung, haki-infused arrows crackling with power. Their serpents hissed and coiled, ready to launch into the fray. Gloriosa herself barked orders with the precision of a veteran. Defend the shore. Don't let those bastards set foot on this island. The Shadow Dragon pirates assembled behind Luffy. Zoro, blades already drawn, his eyes sharp. Sanji, cigarette lit, leg wreathed in flame. Robin, petals unfolding across the walls as her arms sprouted like a spider's web of defense. Vivi, her fox form shimmering, sand swirling in defiance. Kaya, crackling with thunder, her gaze fierce. Yamato, hybrid form already swelling, her will like a mountain. Viper, bazooka loaded and ready. Usopp, rifle ready and aimed. Kobe, fist shaking, but haki burning in his eyes. Pudding, Makita, Chopper, Marianne, Kuro, Tasha G, Alvida, Jem, each stepping forward, no hesitation despite the terror before them. The Kuja warriors stood shoulder to shoulder with them, Amazon Lily itself becoming a fortress. And from the shadows of the coast, three figures emerged, drawing stunned gasps even from Hancock. Katakuri. Smoothie. Brûlé. Katakuri's scarf whipped in the wind as FY, his trident gleaming. Don't mistake this for loyalty to Linlin. If she means to destroy this sea, then she's my enemy. Smoothie sneered, drawing her massive blade. And I've always wanted to test myself against Shiki. Brûlé crossed her arms with a smirk. Consider this, family business. Luffy's grin widened even more. Hey, now that's more like it. The enemy arrives. From above, Shiki's booming laughter rolled across the sea like thunder. Ziahahaha. Monkey brat. Did you really think you could carve an arrow without facing the lions of the Old One? Big Mom's voice followed, shrill and bone-rattling, echoing from her flagship. M.A., 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 M.A. My sweet little Nami, granddaughter of rocks, I'll take you back with me. The rest of you can die. Her fleet advanced, cannons flashing. From the skies, massive chunks of floating rock, mountains, ships, even whole forests, came raining down as Shiki's power twisted gravity itself. The battlefield was set. The clash. The first barrage of cannon fire screamed toward the shore, only to be met with a volley of hockey-tipped arrows from the Kuja, exploding in midair. Zoro cleaved a boulder the size of a tower clean in two, the halves crashing harmlessly into the sea. Kaya's thunderbolts ripped through incoming ships, exploding masts into splinters. Charge! Gloriosa roared. The Kuja serpents surged forward, Amazon warriors raining death from above. Sanji spun midair, flames igniting as he kicked through one of Shiki's floating beasts, reducing it to ash. Robin's giant hands rose from the earth, catching a falling chunk of island and hurling it back at the enemy fleet. Yamato leapt high, her kanabo cracking into a rock lion conjured by Shiki, shattering it with one blow. Chopper, in Monster Point, slammed into the surf, flipping one of Big Mom's smaller ships in a single motion. On the sea itself, Katakori's mochi arms stretched wide, slamming ships aside, while Smoothie carved through an entire wave of homies with one massive swing. Brulee's mirrors rippled, swallowing enemy cannon fire and spitting it back at them twice as hard. The battlefield became chaos, new era versus old, wills colliding in a storm that shook the calm belt. On the highest balcony of Amazon Lily, Lilith watched, arms folded, her crimson eyes glowing faintly. She could crush them all with a thought, but instead, she smirked. Very well, children of this era. Show me, if your storm can truly sweep away the last rotting roots of the old world. The island quaked under the weight of titans. Shiki's laughter thundered as he soared above the chaos, blades drawn, manipulating whole chunks of earth like toys. Come, brat, show me the will that dares to call itself Pirate King. Luffy roared back, shadows swirling across his body, wings unfurling as he shot into the sky. His swords, Shadow Slicer and Day Slicer, crossed with Shiki's golden blades, sparks screaming like fireworks across the heavens. Each clash sent shockwaves tearing the sea apart, walls of water smashing against Amazon Lily's shores. Shiki hurled entire mountain spires at Luffy, but Luffy's dragon wings cut through them with shadow-wrapped arcs, exploding stone into dust. Below, the ground trembled again. Big Mom herself stepped onto the battlefield, Zeus and Prometheus cackling above her, Napoleon in hand. Her bulk made the very earth bow beneath her. M.A., 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 M.A. Little snake, come out. Hancock appeared before her, her beauty warped into nightmare as she shifted into her Gorgon queen beast form. Her towering frame gleamed with obsidian scales, forearms flexing, serpents hissing from her hair. Her three faces glared with godlike fury. You will not touch this island while I breathe, Hancock hissed, her voice layered and monstrous. Big Mom cackled, charging with shocking speed. Their clash shook the battlefield like thunder, Napoleon's flaming blade smashing into Hancock's spiked claws. Zeus hurled bolts of lightning, Prometheus engulfed the sky in fire, while Hancock's snakes snapped, spitting venom that turned entire swaths of homies into stone statues. Wife! Luffy shouted between clashes with Shiki, his heart twisting as he saw Hancock grapple with the Yonko. Shiki only laughed louder, blades pressing harder against Luffy's swords. Eyes on me, brat. If you look away, you'll die. The ambush. Big Mom forced Hancock back step by step, their power rattling the walls of Amazon Lily. Prometheus surged in Hancock's face, exploding in fire, and for a heartbeat, Linlin thought she had the upper hand. But then, the air behind her shimmered. Nami, body cloaked in armament haki, her claws glowing like obsidian blades, burst from the smoke. Her panther eyes blazed with fury. For what you've done, for what you plan to do, I'll carve my name into your back, Big Mom. Before Linlin could turn, Nami struck. Her haki-coated claws ripped across Big Mom's enormous back, leaving 4 burning gouges that crackled with black lightning. Flesh split, blood spraying in a crimson arc. Her massive body crashed to her knees, the wound glowing from the sheer force of Nami's haki. The battlefield froze for a heartbeat. Every eye turned toward Nami, the navigator, the Panther Lady, granddaughter of rocks, now standing over a Yonko with blood dripping from her claws. "Impossible," whispered Smoothie, eyes wide. Katakori's jaw tightened, but a flicker of pride sparked in his gaze. Luffy, locked in midair with Shiki, felt his blood boil, not with fear, but with exhilaration. "Nami. That's what I'm talking about." Hancock, rising from the flames, roared with all three of her monstrous faces. "My wife draws blood from an empress, now witness Big Mom fall." Big Mom's laughter broke through her scream, wild and furious. "M.A., M.A., M.A., M.A. Rocks, blood, it truly does live on. Then let's see if you can survive it." Her aura exploded outward, shaking the heavens. Nami slid back, but her claws were still out, blood on her hands, her will unbroken. The storm of bloodlines was no longer coming, it was here. Shouts and screams tore across the battlefield like torn sails. For a heartbeat after Nami's claws scored Big Mom, every fighter, friend and foe, froze. The calm belt itself seemed to hold its breath. Then the war resumed. "Bring her down." Big Mom howled, voice cracking the air like a cannon. Her hulking form lurched forward, Prometheus roaring into flame, Zeus whipping lightning. Her homies surged to smother Nami, to drown the island in living hunger. But the Shadow Dragon pirates and Kuja were not done. The island answered with a thunder of steel and fang. "Luffy." Katakori's voice cut through the chaos like a blade. He bulldozed through a rain of homies, mochi arms ripping cannon towers aside, and slammed into Shiki's flank, not to betray his commandments of order, but to make a wall for Luffy. "Move. Don't get distracted." Luffy used the opening like a living thing. He dove, armor haki flaring, Shadow Slicer and Day Slicer singing through Shiki's gravity-warped guards. Shiki howled and spun islands like frisbees. Katakori met each thrown mountain with mochi shields and brutal counters so that Luffy's strikes found purchase. The two traded blows that bent the horizon, Shiki's golden blades against Luffy's shadow-wrapped fury, while above them the sky rained rubble. On the opposite flank, Yamato held a battle cry and leapt between Hancock and the torrent of Big Mom's homies. "Hancock. Don't," she began, then cut the sentence with a grin as Smoothie slid up beside her, blade singing silver. Smoothie, who had been lingering on the island's edge with uneasy loyalties, now stood with the Kuja and the Shadow Dragon pirates. She swung that gargantuan sword as if it were a ribbon, cleaving through homies and forcing Prometheus's fire aside so Hancock could breathe. "You wanted me to test myself." She sneered, satisfaction cold in her voice. "Fine. I'll fight for the island." Her Gorgon beast form, retaliated in kind, forearms flailing, snake hair snapping, each strike turning lesser homies to stone. The two women became a whirlwind of venom and thunder. Yamato's Kanabo smashed the ground into geysers, Smoothie's blade sliced air into walls, and Hancock's petrifying venom turned the battlefield into an orchard of statues and smoking craters. But no island, no crew, no allied commander could forget what Big Mom had just tasted. On her flagship a council erupted. "Keep the girl alive." Sparrow barked, eyes wide with opportunistic fire. He jabbed a wrinkled finger at the bleeding marks on Big Mom's back. "If she bears rocks, blood, she's worth more than any brawl. She's a prize. Take her, offer her, sell her, use her. The name alone could topple nations." "Oven's right," chimed a lower voice, one of the captains who'd seen the cold of the world noble's greed. "Preserve the asset, your majesty. Bring her to me. Don't waste a treasure." For a split second, the smallest of slivers, pragmatism flickered across Linlin's face. Greed, hunger, the raw calculus of power. Keep the bloodline, extract value, leverage the legacy. It was the sensible plan anyone who made empires by appetite would make. Then Big Mom's face twisted. "Kill her," she roared, the single word a landslide. The fleet dipped beneath her wave of fury. "Kill Hancock for killing my cracker. Kill the traitors who think they can turn on me. Kill Nami and prove to the world that I am greater than rocks. I will paint the calm belt with the bones of that family if I must." Her hand, monstrous and trembling, slammed the deck. Napoleon's eyes swung maliciously, Zeus shrieked, the homies surged as one hungry heart. The captains paled. Sparrow's mouth opened and shut like a fish. "Majesty," he tried, then stopped. To argue with Big Mom in the middle of a war was to gamble the life of your crew on the chance she let you live. Sparrow swallowed and bent his head. She wants blood, murmured one of the lieutenants, voice small. She'll have it. But, Katakuri, what of your men? Smoothie. Brulee. Pudding. His glance was a knife. They sided with Luffy, with the island. They are traitors. The name cut like a lash. Big Mom's laugh split open into a scream. Traitors. I will carve them, limb from limb. Katakuri. Smoothie. Brulee. Pudding. Her eyeballs rolled. I will end you and make examples. A dozen ships shuddered under the speed of her fury. Cannons loaded with homie essence turned toward the traitors. For a breath, all three of those former Charlotte nobles, Katakuri, Smoothie, Brulee, felt the cold of the abyss on their backs. Katakuri felt it, too. He tightened his jaw, mochi rolling like armor around his wrists as another mountain chunk came hurling down. He met it, not with fear, but with the cold promise of a man who'd chosen his honor over lineage. He slammed the rock aside and spat, then kill us. Try. You won't touch the island while I can stand. Smoothie's laugh was bright, ugly, and certain. If she wants examples, we'll give her lessons she can't digest. Brulee only smirked, stepping back into a mirror that swallowed and spat cannon salvos back at the fleet. Back on the sands, Nami's claws still smoked. The blood that glistened on her hands was not only Big Mom's, it was proof that the island's new era had teeth. Soldiers who had known fear now had fire in their eyes. Hancock rose from the smoke, human form reasserting itself, and stomped forward. Where her beast form had been massive and godlike, her human shape now carried volcanic rage. If you harm a single thread of this island, I'll unmake you, she said, voice low, shattering. I will tear your soul out and sow it into the sea. Big Mom, rising from her knees with flame in her hair, spat blood across the waves and laughed like a god unhinged. Prove it, she snarled. Prove that you are better than rocks. Luffy, still locked in duel with Shiki, still cutting through impossible angles of gravity and iron, caught the exchange and roared. We're not proving anything to you. He bellowed. We're protecting our friends. We'll show you what this crew does. Shiki snarled and hacked a wind island into a spear. Katakuri met it and took the blow so Luffy could finish a strike that almost split the sky. Yamato, Smoothie, Hancock worked as one against Big Mom's homies, each movement a promise that the island would not fall while they still breathed. But the truth of the battlefield remained. Big Mom had declared a vendetta. She had not only targeted the island but named those who had betrayed her, her own kin, and vowed a purge. The war would stop cleaning itself with polite rules. It would become a hunt for traitors and trophies. The horn of Big Mom's flagship screamed again, a long, bone-wrenching note, and a second wave pushed forward. Heavy armor homies the size of buildings, cannons that belched living sugar and teeth, and Shiki himself, grinning like a man who'd waited centuries for a proper feast. Luffy's grin hardened into steel. Then let's make this a feast they'll regret, he said, voice low and certain. Everyone, hold the line, keep Nami safe. Hold this island with your lives. Around him, the crew answered with a roar. Zoro's blades twitched. Sanji's leg flared like a comet. Robin's arms became a cathedral of grasping limbs. Katakuri's scars gleamed in the sun that the island tried to keep. Yamato screamed, and Smoothie answered with a blade that ate the air. Big Mom's ships closed. Shiki's island descended like an executioner's blade. And somewhere, above the din, beneath the thunder of colliding wills, Nami lifted her head, blood on her palms, eyes like a storm unbound. Bring them, she whispered. If they want proof, they'll have to take it from us. The calm belt broke its final harbor of calm. The old era had come to test the new. The island braced, and all those who swore to it drew breath and grit and steel, ready to burn their names across history rather than bend the knee. High above the battlefield, the duel raged like a storm. Luffy and Katakuri moved like twin predators, one shadow and fury, the other cold precision. Every time Shiki swung his golden blades, they met with steel, shadow, or mochi, forcing him back inch by inch. Ziahahaha. Shiki tried to laugh, his voice cracking. You brats think you can best me. I am the golden lion. Katakuri's trident hammered his guard so hard his teeth rattled. You're a relic, he growled. Luffy's grin was feral, eyes blazing. You're nothing but an old, legless has-been. The words stabbed deeper than their blades. Shiki's eyes bulged, fury boiling into desperation. For the first time in decades, fear clawed at his chest. He could see it, his downfall, written in the sneers of the new era. Then his gaze shifted downward. Nami. She fought among the Kuja, carving through homies with panther claws, haki sparking across her strikes. Sweat streaked her face, blood on her cheek, but her eyes burned. And to Shiki, she looked like salvation, a bargaining chip, a hostage, a way to turn the tide. With a snarl, he twisted gravity and dove. Stay away from her. Luffy roared, diving after him, but Shiki's head start was too great. Nami turned at the last second, her claws dripping with homie blood. Her panther ears flicked, danger. She braced, but Shiki's speed was monstrous. Before he could reach her, a massive blur of golden fur charged from the side. RRRAAAAWWWRRR. Richie, Nami's loyal lion, fangs bared, claws ripping the earth, slammed into Shiki's path. The beast lunged, jaws wide, forcing the golden lion to parry. TCH. Stupid animal. Shiki snarled, slashing with his twin blades. Gold arcs ripped through Richie's flank, blood spraying across the sand. The lion crashed to the ground with a pained roar, claws scraping at the earth as he tried to rise. Richie. Nami's scream ripped across the battlefield, raw and trembling with rage. Her heart twisted as she saw burning with something primal. The burst. Everything stopped. A thunderclap of will exploded from her, blasting outward in a dome of violet-black lightning. The ground cracked, sand whipped into storms, enemy soldiers collapsed in waves. Kuja warriors staggered back in awe. Even Luffy and Katakuri, hardened veterans, widened their eyes at the sheer raw force. Conqueror's haki, unleashed without restraint, flooding the island like a hurricane. Shiki froze in midair, stunned. What? Then she was upon him. Nami's body blurred forward, panther form fully manifest, her claws burning with haki. Shiki barely got his blades up, but her speed and fury overwhelmed him. Her claws ripped across his face in a savage arc, black sparks exploding on impact. RAAAAHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHBlood sprayed in a crimson fountain as 4 deep gouges tore across Shiki's face. His scream echoed like a wounded beast as one eye clouded red, his grin split apart into a mess of flesh. The golden lion, who had mocked, crushed, and terrorized seas for decades, staggered back, half-blinded, face shredded by the fury of a woman once called weak. The battlefield went silent. Big Mom herself paused mid-swing against Hancock, eyes widening. Katakuri's jaw clenched, pride flickering in his gaze. Hancock roared triumphantly. Luffy's grin widened to a savage point. And Nami, blood dripping from her claws, chest heaving, eyes blazing like a storm, stood over Richie's wounded body, her aura towering over the battlefield like a queen. "You hurt my family," she snarled, voice trembling with fury. "Now I'll tear the old era apart with my own hands." Shiki, clutching his ruined face, stumbled back through the air, panic finally cracking through his bravado. For the first time in his life, the golden lion looked hunted. Richie, stay with me." Nami dropped to her knees beside the wounded lion, pressing her hands to his bleeding flank. Her tears fell hot, but Richie managed a weak growl, licking her hand with his rough tongue. Alive. Hurt, but alive. Relief washed through her, and with it, unshakable fury. Above them, Shiki staggered, blood pouring from his shredded face. One eye blinded, his grin torn apart, his laughter gone. He clutched his blades, but his arms trembled. He sneered down at Nami, voice slurred and broken. You little witch, you think you've beaten me. I'll take you, and all." A sudden piercing agony cut off his words. Shiki's eyes bulged as his body jerked. He looked down. Through his chest, straight through his heart, jutted Shadow Slicer, black flames crawling along the steel. And in front of him stood Luffy, face shadowed, eyes burning like molten gold. "You're done, old man," Luffy said coldly. Before Shiki could gasp, Luffy's other hand moved. In it gleamed a strange, swirling devil fruit, freshly plucked from the collapsing essence of the golden lion. Its skin shimmered like fractured golden stone, heavy with power. No. Shiki gasped, blood spraying from his mouth. His blades dropped from his hands as his body sagged. "That power, mine." With a roar, Luffy twisted Shadow Slicer and yanked upward, splitting Shiki from chest to skull in a single shadow-wrapped arc. The golden lion Shiki, terror of the seas, relic of the Rocks era, fell apart midair, his lifeless body crashing down in pieces into the waves below. The old era had ended in blood. Big Mom's fury. Across the battlefield, Big Mom froze. Her eyes went wide, her jaw slack. She watched Shiki's body vanish beneath the calm belt waves, and in Luffy's hand, she saw the gleaming devil fruit. No! She screamed, her voice splitting the heavens. Her hair caught fire, Zeus thundered, Prometheus raged, Napoleon howled with bloodlust. Her whole body shook as she shrieked like a beast denied its meal. That power belongs to me. To me, Charlotte Linlin. I'll kill you, Straw Hat. I'll kill every last one of you and take it. Her aura exploded, waves towering high enough to drown the island. Hancock, still in her monstrous Gorgon form, squared her shoulders against the storm, her snakes hissing defiantly. Nami, still kneeling beside Richie, raised her head, her claws dripping with blood and haki, her eyes blazing. Katakuri, Smoothie, and Yamato moved to shield them, standing firm against the Yonko's wrath. And Luffy, standing above the battlefield, wings spread, swords dripping with Shiki's blood and the fruit glowing in his grip, looked down at Big Mom with a savage grin. You want it, Linlin. He roared, shadows swirling around him like a storm. Then come and take it. But know this. He clenched the fruit in his hand, its glow pulsing like a heartbeat. Your era just died with Shiki. Big Mom's scream still tore the heavens, her aura shaking every stone, every wave, every soul on Amazon Lily. She lunged forward, fire and lightning raging around her, Napoleon raised high. Then she stopped. Her massive form froze mid-step, her eyes widening in disbelief. Because three shadows had appeared on the horizon, walking with a calmness that no storm could move. Even her children faltered, their attacks pausing mid-motion as they too recognized the impossible. Red hair, blowing in the wind like a banner. A black coat, a steady gait, and a smile both sharp and warm. Red-haired Shanks. Beside him, crimson eyes glowed faintly, his presence colder than steel and heavier than any mountain. The head of the Revolutionary Army. Monkey D. Dragon. And between them, laughing softly with a queen's confidence, her crimson hair falling like fire, Lilith. Luffy's grin split his face, wild and proud. Dad. Uncle Shanks. You came. Shanks chuckled, pushing his sword hilt deeper into his belt. Of course. You think me and the boys would miss your wedding. Dragon gave a rare nod, his eyes turning like knives toward Big Mom. Charlotte Linlin. His voice was low, steady. You should be careful. Today isn't just a battlefield, it's my son's future. Big Mom's breath hitched. For the first time in decades, she felt it, true hesitation. And then she saw it. Ships cutting the horizon, sails bearing the crest of the Red Hair Pirates. On the decks, Ben Beckman, Lucky Roo, Yasop, and the full strength of Shanks' crew, grinning like wolves eager for blood. But that wasn't all. From another direction, another fleet surged, the flags of the Revolutionary Army. Commanders gathered on their decks, Sabo, Morley, Karasu, Bello Betty, Lindbergh, every one of them radiating willpower enough to crush nations. The battlefield went silent, save for the crackle of Big Mom's fury faltering. And then came the voice that cut her last shred of certainty. Beat it, Linlin. We don't appreciate wedding crashers. Big Mom spun, her teeth gnashing, and froze once more. There they stood at the edge of Amazon Lily's shore, Silver's Rayleigh, the Dark King, calm and smiling as if this were nothing more than a tavern brawl. At his side, cigarette smoke curling around her lips, Shikuyaku, eyes glinting like knives. Rayleigh, Shaki, Big Mom's voice cracked, a mixture of rage and old, deep-seated fear. Rayleigh tilted his head, almost apologetic, yet his hand rested lazily on his sword hilt. Sorry, Linlin, but today isn't about you. It's about family. Shaki exhaled a stream of smoke, her smirk sharp enough to cut steel. And if you so much as touch my daughter, you'll wish Roger had killed you back then. The battlefield trembled again, but not from Big Mom's aura, from the sheer gathering of legends. The Shadow Dragon Pirates, the Kuja, the Red Hair Pirates, the Revolutionaries, the Dark King and his queen, all standing together, shoulder to shoulder. Luffy laughed, throwing his head back, his wings flaring wide. This is it. This is my era. And you're not crashing it, Linlin. For the first time in her long, monstrous life, Big Mom took a step back. Linlin's breath came ragged, her hulking frame still trembling with the aftershock of Nami's strike, and Shikiai's rebel second. She simply stared. At the fleets, at the warriors gathered like a stormfront, at the kids and monsters who dared carve her age-old rule into blood. Then something that looked very much like reason, or rotten pragmatism, crept up through the madness. Her huge hands clenched, then relaxed. Her commanders shifted uncertainly, the cannons at once lowering as if obeying an unspoken law. "Stand down," Linlin barked at last, and the word rolled over the water like an edict. "All ships, hold." Her voice still carried the iron of a queen, but the immediate, ravenous charge stilled. Men and homies hesitated, the great gears of war slowed. For a moment everyone held their breath. The island seemed to listen. Linlin's face, however, did not soften. Bitter flame glittered in her eyes. She turned slowly, each motion a threat wrapped in venom. Her gaze locked on Luffy first, then Hancock, then Nami, the three who had made her blood boil and the sea itself quake. "This isn't over, Shadow Dragon," she spat, throat working. "You and your wives and your crew, I will not rest until I parade your corpses on my deck. I will string your bones across my mast and let the world feast on your names." Her head tilted, and the voice dropped to a poisonous whisper that found the ears of four who had betrayed blood for a cause. "As for the four of you," her glance sliced to katakori, smoothie, brulee, and pudding. "Next time we meet, you will not be so lucky." A murmur ran through the fleet, the old fear rekindled like an ember fanned into a blade. Sparrow's face twitched, some captains paled. Big Mom's children exchanged looks of fury and confusion, torn between mother's rage and the logic that had, for once, kept them alive. Luffy did not blink. He stood on the scorched sand, swords dripping with Shiki's blood, the stolen fruit cooling in his palm like a promise. His grin was not the boyish grin of games, it was a blade. "You'll get your chance to parade things," he said slowly, voice carrying raw as iron. "But you'll be parading the wrong people. We'll decide who hangs where. We'll fight you if we must, and we'll win." Hancock moved to Luffy's side, hand over his, fingers locking. Her eyes flashed venom and love. "You would not dare," she said quietly to Linlin, but even as she spoke she flexed, snakes coiling, aura boiling. That quiet threat carried the weight of coming war. Nami, still with Richie breathing shallow but alive at her side, pushed herself up. She wiped the blood and sand from her claws and met Linlin's promise with a steady look. "You can try," she said, voice steady but cold. "But you underestimate what we'll protect." Lilith, watching from the shadows, let a small, humorless smile slip. Shanks' hand rested on the hilt of his sword but did not lift it. Dragon's eyes were storm-deep and unreadable. Rayleigh gave the barest nod as if to punctuate the end of the day's cruelty. Linlin laughed then, a sound like breaking sugar and cracking thunder. "Very well. Today I will spare you for my own reasons." The laugh was a promise of return, not mercy. "But beware. You will not have my pity again. Remember this sting." With that, like a mountain deciding to shift, Big Mom turned. Her flagships drew back. As they pulled away, cannons were not fired. The lumbering fleet retreated under Linlin's command, battered but alive, nursing wounds and rancor. Silence fell over Amazon Lily, but it was an uneasy silence, the kind that waits for thunder to return. Fighters looked to one another, some elated, some deadened, all changed. Shanks laughed low and bright, Dragon gave a curt nod toward Luffy, and Rayleigh walked forward, cane tapping a gentle, steady rhythm. Luffy dropped to his knees beside Nami and Richie, hand resting on the lion's flank. He met Nami's eyes and laughed, half relief, half feral triumph. "You did good," he said simply. Nami closed her eyes for a heartbeat, then opened them, fierce and tired. "We did," she corrected. On the horizon, Linlin's silhouette receded into the heat haze over the calm belt. Her last words carried on the wind, sharp and certain, "Enjoy your victory while you can. I will feast on your core another day." The island exhaled. The crews tended the wounded, raised hastily new defenses, and, despite the dread, began to plan. The war was postponed, not ended. And every heart there knew the truth. When Big Mom returned, the seas themselves would have to be ready. The battlefield was still smoking, the wounded tended, but laughter and relief began to ripple through the camp. The Shadow Dragon pirates, the Kuja, the Red Hair pirates, and even the revolutionaries shared in the strange, battered piece. Amid the bustle, Luffy stood with Shadow Slicer on his back and Shiki's devil fruit still in his hand. Its golden, stone-veined skin shimmered like it held the weight of the sky itself. He grinned wide and called out, "Tashigi, get over here." The marine-turned ally stumbled forward, still shaken from the battle. Me, Captain Luffy." "Yeah," Luffy said, tossing the fruit underhand. She caught it clumsily, nearly dropping it. "You're eating this?" Her eyes widened. "What? No way, I can't." "You can," Nami said firmly, wiping blood from her claws. "If anyone can handle a cursed fruit, it's you. Besides," Luffy added with a mischievous grin, "you'll look cooler if you can actually float your sword instead of tripping over it." Tashigi's face burned red. "That's not. I don't," she huffed, staring at the fruit in her hands. After a long hesitation, she bit into it. Everyone winced in sympathy at once. "Bleg. It tastes like rotten gravel and seaweed." Tashigi gagged, forcing it down. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the ground beneath her feet trembled. Pebbles rose, then rocks, then whole slabs of Amazon lilies earth began to lift into the air. Within seconds, half the courtyard floated 10 meters off the ground, Kuja warriors screaming as they scrambled for balance. "Ah, what's happening?" Tashigi flailed, her sword spinning around her head in the anti-gravity bubble. Luffy fell over laughing. "Bahahaha, you're floating the island." Robin covered her smile with one hand. "So this is the power of the Fua no Mi reborn, how fitting." "Put it down," Nami shrieked, hair flying as her chair drifted toward the ceiling. Before Tashigi could panic further, a massive thunk cracked against the top of her head. Yamato loomed over her, Kanabo resting on her shoulder, Oni grin wide. "You just raised your training by 3 times, Tashigi." Yamato barked, drill sergeant voice booming. "If you can lift an island, you can damn well control it." "OWWW. That hurt," Tashigi wailed, clutching her head as the floating earth crashed back down with a thunderous boom. Dust and Kuja warriors sprawled everywhere, groaning. Even Dragon allowed himself the faintest twitch of amusement, while Shanks laughed openly, slapping Yasop on the back. Hancock, however, crossed her arms, staring down her nose at Tashigi. "If you ever drop my home again, I'll turn you to stone, fruit or no fruit." "Why yes, ma'am," Tashigi squeaked, bowing so hard she nearly face-planted in the rubble. Luffy just laughed harder, holding his stomach. "Bahahaha. This is gonna be fun." The ceremony. A wide dais was built in the heart of the garden, strewn with flowers and serpent motifs. At its center stood Shanks, already flushed from more than a few bottles, his sword sheathed, his grin loose and warm. All right, Shanks slurred, waving his arms. "Time to get these 3 brats married before I pass out, Ben." "Stop glaring, I'm fine." Ben Beckman sighed in the background, hand on his forehead. Yamato, standing just off the dais, had both arms crossed, and one hand gripping Shanks' shoulder to keep him upright. "Hold still, old man," she growled. "You're not fainting on me before the vows." Shanks wobbled, but laughed. "Oi, I've fought Kaido half-drunk. I can marry 3 kids half-drunk too." The crowd erupted in laud. Luffy, dressed in a black and red coat, swords at his side, looked more serious than anyone had ever seen, until his grin broke through again. Hancock, radiant in a flowing crimson and gold gown, her hair jeweled and serpents woven into her veil, her beauty enough to make Kuja warriors weep openly. Nami, elegant in a sapphire dress laced with storm motifs, a golden panther emblem across her chest, her smile soft but fierce. Beside them stood their chosen. Sabo, Luffy's best man, coat crisp, smile proud though his eyes gleamed with unshed tears. Sandersonia, Hancock's maid of honor, stoic but unable to hide her smile as she clasped her sister's hands. Yamato, Nami's maid of honor, beaming like a proud sibling, Kanabo resting casually on her shoulder. And skipping down the aisle ahead of them, scattering petals with giddy excitement, little Isa, flower girl, giggling every time petals stuck in her hair. The vows. As the 3 stood together, Shanks raised his voice and the rum bottle in his other hand. "Oi, listen up. I don't care what the world government thinks. These 3, Monkey D. Luffy, Boa Hancock, and Nami, are pirates, warriors, and idiots, but most of all their family. And if they want to spend their lives chained together, who am I to stop them? The crowd laughed, but more than a few wept quietly. Sanji sulked in the corner, cigarette trembling in his lips. Unfair, so unfair, Nami Swan, Hancock, both. He collapsed to the ground, pounding his fists weakly. Pudding smacked him on the back of the head. Shut up before I shoot you, pervert cook. Tashigi sniffled openly, wiping her eyes with her sleeve. Even Katakuri tilted his head down slightly, hiding a small smile. Do you swear, Shanks asked, wobbling a bit, to fight, feast, laugh, and love together, no matter how many damn Yonko or Marines try to ruin it? I do. Luffy shouted without hesitation. I do, Hancock said, her voice trembling with rare emotion. I do, Nami added softly, her hands squeezing the other two's tightly. Then by the power vested in me, Shanks hiccuped, nearly falling. Yamato caught him by the collar and shoved him upright again. I now pronounce you, husband, wives, captain, navigator, snake princess, and whatever else you lunatics want to call yourselves. The crowd erupted in cheers. Cannons fired in celebration. Music roared. Luffy laughed and pulled Hancock and Nami into a clumsy but fierce kiss that nearly knocked all three of them over. The Kuja wept openly, the Shadow Dragon pirates shouted with joy, and even Dragon, Stoic Dragon, allowed himself the smallest, proudest smile. Rayleigh leaned against Shaki with a chuckle. Roger would be proud. Shaki exhaled smoke, her eyes glistening. So am I. The great hall of Amazon Lily glowed like a dream that refused to end. Lanterns swung gently in the ocean breeze, painting the air with golden rose light. Tables overflowed with roasted sea beasts, exotic fruits, and barrels of rum cracked open in celebration. Music rolled through the night, drums, flutes, and laughter, the sound of a new era being born. At the center of it all sat Luffy, still in his dark captain's coat, the gold of his rings glinting as Hancock leaned lazily against his shoulder and Nami playfully fed him pieces of fruit. Around them, the Shadow Dragon pirates feasted and laughed, their joy echoing like thunder through the jungle. But near the edge of the long banquet table sat three figures who did not yet belong: Katakuri, towering and silent; Smoothie, arms folded, regal but wary; and Brûlé, sipping cautiously from a cup, her sharp eyes darting between the faces of her new surroundings. Across from them, Pudding glowed with happiness. She was all smiles, bouncing in her chair. Can you believe this? She squealed, her third eye sparkling. My big brother and sisters, here, actually here. Luffy, wiping his mouth with the back of his hand, grinned wide. Yeah, it's about time. He stood, lifting his cup high. The room quieted at once, the crew instinctively following their captain's energy. Katakuri, Smoothie, Brûlé. Luffy's voice carried over the music, firm but warm. You fought for your freedom, and for your own choices. You stood with us when it mattered most. His grin widened into that familiar, reckless smile. So, what do you say? Why not make it official? Join us. Be part of the Shadow Dragon Pirates. A murmur swept through the hall. Even Hancock raised an eyebrow, though a faint smile tugged at her lips. Nami smirked. You sure about bringing in more Charlottes, Captain? She teased. We barely survived the last batch. Luffy laughed. Yeah, but these ones don't bite. He looked back to Katakuri. Well, not much. Katakuri's eyes studied him for a long moment. The memory of their battle, the clash of will, the raw fire in Luffy's spirit, flickered through his mind. Slowly, the stoic man set his cup down and rose. You're reckless, he said quietly. Impulsive, irritating beyond reason. Then, after a beat, his lips curved into the faintest of smiles. But if anyone deserves to lead the next era, it's you. He crossed the room and dropped to one knee before the Shadow Dragon's table. Monkey D. Luffy, I accept. The crew erupted in cheers. Tankards clashed, laughter roared. Yamato, standing nearby with her kanabo slung over her shoulder, grinned like a predator. Excellent. You can help me whip this crew into shape, she said, eyes glinting. You're going to love our training. Katakuri chuckled, a rare sound that rumbled through the hall. I'll try not to break them too quickly. Smoothie sighed, exchanging a look with Brûlé. We don't really have a choice now, do we? She murmured. Then, with a small smirk, she rose and inclined her head toward Luffy. Fine. If Katakuri joins, I will too. Better to follow him than go back to mother. Brule snorted, folding her arms. TCH. And someone needs to make sure you idiots don't drown in your own testosterone. Count me in. Luffy's grin widened even further. Then it's settled. Pudding nearly exploded with joy, jumping up and throwing her arms around all three siblings at once. Yes, yes, we're a family again, finally. Tears of happiness sparkled in her eyes as Katakuri gently patted her head. The room filled once more with cheers, laughter, and the pounding of fists against tables. The Shadow Dragon pirates had grown again, not through conquest, but through something rarer, choice. And as Luffy raised his cup, his voice rang out like a battle cry and a promise all at once. To family, the one we choose. The morning after the banquet was painted in gold and blue. The sea shimmered like glass beneath the rising sun, and the island of Amazon Lily, once scarred by battle, now stood reborn, radiant in peace. Seagulls wheeled lazily overhead, their cries mingling with the sound of waves and distant laughter. The Shadow Sorrow was ready to sail. On the beach, the Shadow Dragon pirates gathered, their belongings packed and their hearts heavy. The women of Amazon Lily lined the shore, waving snakes and handkerchiefs. Drums beat slowly, like the heartbeat of the island itself. At the front stood Luffy, Hancock, and Nami, side by side. Hancock's regal poise cracked slightly as she gazed back at her people. Nami squeezed her hand gently, a silent comfort. Luffy stood between them, a proud grin on his face that couldn't quite hide the sting of farewell. But the sight that truly stilled the crew was what waited beside the gangplank: Shanks, Dragon, and Lilith. Three legends, three parts of Luffy's soul. Shanks had that same easy grin, his red hair catching the morning light. "You sure you're ready, kid?" he asked, voice light but eyes proud. "You've got quite the crew now, and quite the wives." Luffy laughed, rubbing the back of his head. "Hey, yeah, guess I finally outgrew chasing after your ship, huh?" Shanks chuckled and pulled him into a rough hug, slapping his back. "Outgrew? You've already surpassed me, brat. Don't let it go to your head." Behind them, Dragon stood with arms crossed, his usual stern expression softened by the faintest smile. "You've done well, Luffy," he said quietly. "But remember, the sea will test you harder than any enemy. Keep your will strong." Luffy nodded, serious for once. "I will, Dad." Then came Lilith, the she-devil herself, and the crew collectively took a cautious half-step back as she approached. The woman who had faced down legends, who could unmake storms with a gesture, looked almost human. Her crimson eyes shimmered as she cupped Luffy's face in her hands. "My little boy, all grown up," she whispered, her voice trembling. "First a pirate, now a husband, soon enough, the whole world will bow before you." "Ah, Mom, don't cry," Luffy said with his goofy grin, but she only pulled him into a fierce embrace that lifted him clean off the ground. "I'll cry if I damn well want to." Lilith snapped, her tone halfway between fury and heartbreak. "You're still my baby, no matter how many monsters you slay." Hancock smiled softly, bowing her head with genuine respect. "You raised a good man, Lilith." Lilith snorted, wiping her tears on her sleeve. "He raised himself, I just made sure he survived long enough to make trouble." Even Dragon's composure cracked at that, a chuckle slipping past his lips. Shanks laughed outright, shaking his head. "That's Luffy all right." Then, from the crowd, Sabo stepped forward, his arms wide. "Don't think you're sailing off without saying goodbye to me, little brother." Luffy grinned and pulled him into a hug that nearly cracked ribs. "You kidding? Wouldn't miss it." He leaned in and whispered with a wicked smirk, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Besides, the next wedding's probably gonna be you and Koala, huh?" The words hit like cannon fire. Sabo froze, face turning bright red. Koala, standing nearby, nearly dropped the stack of maps she was holding. "Luffy," she squeaked, her cheeks blazing. The crew burst into laughter. Even Dragon pinched the bridge of his nose, and Lilith had to cover her mouth to hide her grin. "We're not, it's not." Sabo stammered, but Luffy only laughed louder. "Relax, bro. We'll bring rum." Koala huffed and smacked his arm, but the faint smile on her lips gave her away. As the laughter faded, the farewells began in earnest. One by one, Luffy's allies, the Kuja warriors, the revolutionaries, the red hair pirates, offered waves, salutes, and promises to meet again. The air was thick with pride, sorrow, and the promise of future battles. At last, Luffy turned to his crew. "All right, everyone, let's go home." The gangplank was raised. The Shadow Sorrow's sails unfurled, catching the morning wind. As the ship drifted erupted across Amazon Lily, echoing like thunder. Lilith stood between Shanks and Dragon, tears streaking her cheeks as she waved. "Don't you dare die before me, Luffy," she shouted, "or I'll drag you back myself." Luffy laughed, waving from the railing. "You got it, Mom. Love you." And with that, the Shadow Sorrow cut across the sea, leaving behind the Island of Love, the legends of the old era, and the warmth of family that made even the strongest hearts ache. The Grand Line awaited once more. A new chapter of the Shadow Dragon's legend had begun. The Shadow Sorrow cut smoothly through the morning waves, its black sails gleaming under the sunlight. The sea was calm, the air warm, and for the first time in weeks, there was no trace of war or worry, just laughter and the easy rhythm of the ocean. The crew had gathered on deck, their spirits high after leaving Amazon Lily behind. Barrels of fresh fruit and rum were stacked by the mast, and even Zoro looked half awake, lounging with a bottle at his side. Luffy stretched, yawning wide enough to make Nami flick his forehead. Hancock giggled behind her hand, the sunlight turning her hair into a halo of gold. Then Luffy raised a hand for silence, that trademark grin spreading across his face. "Okay, everyone, listen up." The crew straightened immediately, though most were still smiling. Luffy crossed his arms, pretending to look serious. "Me, Hancock, and Nami are gonna be, busy for a few days." Nami's eyebrow arched. "Pre-honeymoon, you mean?" Hancock's cheeks turned pink, but she nodded proudly. "It is only fitting that we celebrate our union properly." The crew froze. Silence. Then the deck erupted in chaos. Sanji dropped to his knees, tears streaming down his face. 4 days. 4 whole days. "You lucky, lucky bastard," he wailed, pounding the deck. Usopp covered his face, muttering, "We're all doomed. He'll come out of there glowing like a god." Zoro snorted. "TCH. Let him have his fun. Maybe he'll be too tired to boss us around for once." Kaya and Pudding both giggled, while Robin hid her smile behind a wine glass. Even Kobe looked like he wanted to dive overboard to escape the embarrassment. Luffy laughed, clearly enjoying their reactions. "Hey, don't worry, we'll still be on the ship. Just, in our room." Sanji's sobbing grew louder. "That makes it worse." Hancock leaned toward him with a teasing smile. "Would you like to clean the deck outside our room? You can listen all night long." Sanji promptly fainted with a puff of smoke from his nose. Luffy doubled over laughing before turning serious again. "All right, while we're busy, Yamato and Katakuri are in charge." The 2 strongest warriors on deck straightened instantly. Yamato smacked her fist into her palm. "Understood, Captain." Katakuri gave a single firm nod. "The crew's safety is my responsibility." Luffy grinned wider. "Good. Just, don't let us get eaten by a whale this time, okay?" A ripple of laughter swept through the crew. Yamato's face turned bright red. "That was one time. One," she shouted, but it only made everyone laugh harder. Katakuri covered his mouth to hide a smirk. Even stoic as he was, he muttered, "Noted." Yamato glared around the deck as the laughter grew. "You're all going to regret that," she grumbled darkly, tightening her grip on her kanabo. Luffy, Hancock, and Nami shared a final amused glance before heading below deck. Hancock hooked her arm through Luffy's, and Nami flicked her tail playfully behind her as the cabin door shut. 4 days of peace, Robin murmured, sipping her drink. "Assuming the ship survives it." Usopp groaned. 4 days of earthquakes, more like. Kaya slapped his shoulder. "Oh, hush, let them be happy." Zoro poured another drink. "If the ship sinks, I'm not bailing anyone out." Above them, Yamato stood beside Katakuri at the rail, the 2 most disciplined members now babysitting a crew of maniacs. Katakuri sighed. "This is going to be interesting." Yamato nodded grimly, watching the horizon. "You have no idea." And as the sun rose higher, the Shadow Sorrow caught the wind once more, its black sails billowing as it drifted toward its next unknown island, toward the adventure, chaos, and laughter that only the Shadow Dragon pirates could bring. The sea ahead shimmered like promise itself. On the starboard side, Yamato faced Tashigi with her kanabo resting easily on her shoulder. "Kuro, arms folded, watched with sharp eyes, while Zoro leaned against the rail with his swords sheathed, a half-grin tugging at his lips. Even Smoothie loomed nearby, her massive blade balanced casually against the deck. Tashigi's breaths came ragged, sweat plastering her hair to her forehead. She hovered a few feet above the deck, the float fruit shimmering faintly around her. Small crates and loose ropes drifted around her in clumsy orbits, evidence of her growing control. "Keep your focus," Yamato barked. She lunged, kanabo swinging in a wide arc. Tashigi gritted her teeth and darted upward, the fruit's power lifting her just out of reach. For once, she didn't trip, didn't fumble, she moved. Zoro whistled low. "Not bad, 4 eyes. You're starting to look like a swordswoman instead of a lost cadet." "Don't call me that," Tashigi snapped, forcing herself to steady her blade. But Yamato pressed harder. Blow after blow rained down, each swing of her weapon cracking the deck with thunder. Tashigi scrambled, weaving midair, sweat stinging her eyes. Every time she thought she had an opening, Yamato was already there, her observation haki cutting through hesitation like glass. Then it happened. Yamato lunged with brutal speed, faster than before, her kanabo flashing toward Tashigi's guard. But instead of panicking, Tashigi twisted in midair, steel flashing. Slice. A thin line appeared across Yamato's cheek. Just a scratch, but a scratch all the same. The deck went silent. Even Smoothie raised an eyebrow. Kuro's eyes widened faintly. Zoro's grin sharpened. Tashigi herself froze, eyes wide, as if she couldn't believe what she'd done. Then Yamato's lips curved into a wolfish smile. She touched her cheek, smearing the tiny bead of blood with her thumb. "Well done," she said softly. Then her voice rang loud and clear across the deck. "Now, give Zoro back his katana." The entire deck erupted in shock. "What?" Tashigi nearly dropped her sword, her face scarlet. Even Katakuri, overseeing the chaos from the other side of the ship, glanced over with faint surprise. "Interesting." Zoro's grin widened into something dangerous. "Hey, about damn time." On the opposite side of the deck, Kobe was already living his worst nightmare. Katakuri stood like a statue, trident in hand, his eyes half-lidded but locked on Kobe with terrifying precision. Every movement Kobe made, Katakuri was already countering, his mastery of observation haki absolute. To make matters worse, Alvida was circling nearby with her iron mace, barking insults every time Kobe stumbled. "You call that footwork? My grandmother swings better than that." And then there was the cherry on top. Viper, perched on a crate with his bazooka, fired round after round, explosions rocking the deck. Usopp, crouched beside him with his rifle, fired paint-tipped shots that stung like hornets. Katakuri's order had been clear, no haki on the bullets yet. Let him learn the pain first. Kobe ducked, rolled, barely blocked a strike, only to take a paint round to the forehead. He yelped, tripped, and nearly ate Alvida's mace before scrambling up again. His breath came fast, his arms shook, but his eyes burned with stubbornness. He had observation, he had armament, but conquerors, no matter how hard he tried, that spark refused to come back. Katakuri's voice cut through the noise, calm and merciless. "You'll never touch me until you master yourself. Now move." Kobe lunged, desperate, and Katakuri wasn't even there. The trident's blunt end tapped his shoulder almost lazily, sending him sprawling. From the rail, Usopp cupped his hands. "If you stop moving, Viper's got explosive rounds next." "What?" The deck roared with laughter, but even in his misery, Kobe clenched his fists and rose again. The deck still hummed with tension as Yamato came back from her room, carrying a cloth-wrapped bundle. She pulled it free and untied the wrappings with deliberate care. Gasps rippled across the crew as the steel within gleamed in the sunlight. The purple scabbard shimmered faintly, the guard shaped like a dark flame. The sword pulsed with an aura so sharp it seemed to slice the air itself. Enma. Even Zoro straightened, his eyes narrowing. His hand twitched toward his own swords instinctively. "This blade," Yamato said, her voice carrying over the sound of waves, "was once wielded by Kazuki Oden, one of the greatest samurai who ever lived." She rested the weapon across her palms with reverence. "When I left Wano, his daughter Hiyori placed it in my hands. She told me to guard it, until I found someone worthy of wielding it." The crew leaned in, the weight of history pressing against their chests. And now, Yamato's eyes locked on Tashigi, sharp but proud, I believe that person is you. The deck erupted in shock. What? Tashigi's knees buckled, and she nearly dropped to her knees. Me. Even Katakuri frowned slightly, his trident tapping the deck. Are you sure? That sword, it is not gentle. Power like that devours the weak. Yamato nodded, unfazed. Exactly. Enma is powerful, too powerful. It drinks haki, it demands strength. In the wrong hands, it will kill its wielder. But, she smiled faintly. That scratch on my cheek proved something. Tashigi doesn't run from the impossible. She fights for it. Zoro's teeth clenched, jealousy flickering in his gaze. To touch Odin's blade was to touch a legend, and yet Yamato had chosen her. He gave a sharp exhale, forcing a grin. TCH. Don't get cocky, 4 eyes. If you can't handle it, I'll take it off your hands. Tashigi shook her head furiously, waving her arms. No, I'm not. I can't, this is too much. Her hands trembled as Yamato pressed the hilt into them. The instant she touched it, the sword seemed to breathe, its aura flaring like a living thing. Tashigi's knees almost gave out as her haki drained in a rush. Her eyes went wide with panic. It's pulling my strength. Katakuri's gaze sharpened, intrigued. Smoothie crossed her arms with a smirk. Even Alvida leaned on her mace, curious despite herself. Yamato's voice cut through Tashigi's panic, calm and commanding. Steady your will. Breathe. Don't let the sword control you, make it bend to you. Tashigi bit down hard, sweat streaming, but slowly her grip steadied. The blade's aura dimmed, just enough to let her breathe again. Yamato's smile softened. That's it. You see, Tashigi, the only reason I've been so hard on you is because you remind me of myself. Back when I was a child, chasing after Odin's shadow. Her eyes flicked to the horizon, then back. I wanted to be him. To carry his will. But now, you'll carry a piece of that legacy too. Tashigi's breath hitched. Her eyes shimmered, and for a moment she looked like she might break down right there on the deck. But Yamato clapped her hands suddenly, shattering the tension. Enough crying. This is training, not story time. Back to it. The crew burst into laughter, the emotional air lightening in an instant. Zoro snorted and drew his own blades, smirking at Tashigi. Guess I'll see if you're worthy of standing beside me after all. Tashigi swallowed, staring down at the legendary sword in her trembling hands. She wasn't ready, not yet. But with Yamato's words still burning in her ears, she lifted the blade anyway. Her training had only just begun. The sea mist thinned to reveal land, an island unlike any they'd seen before. Its trees gleamed pale as ivory, their leaves almost silver in the sunlight. The ground shimmered faintly, dusted with white moss that crunched beneath boots. Birds with alabaster feathers soared overhead, their cries echoing like glass bells. The Shadow Sorrow anchored offshore, and a landing party set out. Yamato, Tashigi, Kaya, Viper, Sanji, with Brûlé tagging along. And of course, the ever-watchful beasts, Salome the snake and Richie the lion. Creepy place, Viper muttered, resting his bazooka on his shoulder as he kicked at the pale grass. Like we walked into a painting. Or a snow globe, Kaya added, her eyes wide with wonder. They moved deeper into the white forest, and soon stumbled across a clearing. There, tethered to a brittle wooden post, stood a white horse. Her mane flowed like spun silk, her body trembling as she stamped the ground nervously. The poor thing looked half wild, eyes wide with fear. A horse. Tashigi blinked. Not just any horse. Sanji's cigarette nearly dropped from his mouth. That's a thoroughbred if I've ever seen one. Look at her coat, beautiful. But before anyone could move closer, Richie snarled, eyes glowing as he crouched low, fangs bared. Salome hissed, scales rattling as she slid forward, tongue flicking. Both predators had locked onto the trembling mare. Richie. Salome. No. Kaya yelped, stepping forward. Lightning sparked faintly in her hands. The lion roared, the snake hissed louder, and for a terrifying second, it seemed the poor horse's life was over. Then Kaya snapped her fingers. A sharp jolt of blue lightning cracked across the ground between the two beasts. Both froze, Richie growling as his mane stood on end, Salome recoiling with a furious hiss. Before they could lunge again, Brûlé stepped forward, her eyes flashing. She pointed at both with a cruel smirk. You two try that again, and I'll throw you into the mirror world so deep you'll be chasing your tails for eternity. The snake recoiled instantly, hissing in reluctant obedience. Richie snorted, pawed the ground, but backed off with a sulky glare. Good pets, Brûlé said dryly, brushing her hands together. Honestly. Eating a poor horse. What are you, savages? Richie grumbled something that sounded suspiciously like a growl of protest, but he slunk back all the same. Kaya hurried to the horse's side, her hands glowing faintly with soothing static. Easy, girl. Easy, she whispered, gently stroking the mare's neck. The horse trembled but didn't flee, leaning into Kaya's touch like she recognized kindness for the first time in years. The crew turned. An old man stepped shakily out of the trees, his hair and beard white as the island itself. His eyes glistened with tears as he hobbled forward. Cherry, my cherry, his voice cracked as he reached trembling hands toward the horse. The mare whinnied, ears flicking at the sound. Then she surged forward, nuzzling against him with a desperate cry. The old man broke down, clutching her neck. My girl, I thought I'd lost you forever. Tashigi's eyes softened. Cherry, that's her name, isn't it? The crew fell silent, watching as man and horse reunited, the bond between them undeniable. Even Salome and Richie lowered their heads, chastened by the moment. Yamato smiled faintly, resting her kanabo against her shoulder. Guess fate wanted us to bring family back together. The crew were still smiling at the touching reunion between the old man and Cherry when a shrill, obnoxious laugh cut across the clearing. Fuya hey hey hey. What's this? A party without me. Every head turned. Limping into the clearing came a ship, and standing at the prow with arms wide was none other than Foxy the Silver Fox. His ridiculous grin shone brighter than his greasy hair, his men stumbling behind him. Hamburger looked pale as a ghost, while Porch whispered something frantically into her captain's ear. The Shadow Dragon pirates froze. Then half the crew burst into laughter. Who the hell is this clown? Zoro muttered, unimpressed. Some kind of circus reject. Sanji squinted. Katakuri didn't laugh. He just folded his arms, his gaze sharp. Do you want me to kill him and be done with it? Foxy's grin faltered instantly. Sweat EAD. And now, let's not be hasty. I, simply came here to challenge you. He struck a dramatic pose, though his legs were shaking. Yes, to a Davy back fight. 5 rounds. The crew blinked, then burst into even louder laughter. Wait, that's your big plan. Kaya nearly doubled over. Fwahahaha. Usopp slapped his knee. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Yamato stepped forward, her eyes narrowing. Wait, who are you again? The question hit Foxy like a bullet. He froze, staring at her blankly. What? Yeah, Zoro added with a smirk. Never heard of you. Before Foxy could answer, Kuro adjusted his glasses, speaking in his usual calm tone. Actually, I think I saw his bounty poster while gathering intelligence on Paradise. Foxy the Silver Fox. Bounty. 26 million berry. The crew went dead silent. Then the laughter came crashing down like a wave. 26 million. Sanji nearly choked on his cigarette. That's it. Pudding giggled. Pathetic, Smoothie muttered, rolling her eyes. Even Katakuri looked faintly insulted. Foxy's grin twitched. He puffed up his chest. Laugh if you want, but a Davy back is sacred pirate tradition. If you refuse, you're nothing but cowards. So either fight me, or... His voice cracked on the last words, his knees wobbling. Inside, he prayed desperately, please don't kill me. Please let the bait work. If I win, I'll have a crew of monsters at my command. Behind him, Hamburger was shaking so badly he nearly toppled into the sea. Porch whispered, Captain, is this really a smart idea? Shadow Dragon Luffy is, almost considered a Yonko already. Foxy's smile faltered again, but he forced a laugh. Hey, details. Yamato sighed and turned to the crew. All right, everyone, let's decide what to do with him. The Shadow Dragon pirates gathered in a circle, voices overlapping. Just crush him. Zoro. Wouldn't even be a warm-up. Katakuri. Might be funny. Robin. Could be good training for the weaklings. Alvida. But then the question no one wanted to voice rose up. Who's gonna tell the captain? The room went quiet. Faces turned pale. Every man and woman looked at one another, and instantly looked away. Then a small, mischievous voice piped up. I nominate, Kobe. Everyone turned. Little Isa stood there, grinning sweetly. That's for making me scrub the ship's toilets, rubber boy. Kobe went white as a sheet. What? No, 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 not me. But the crew clapped him on the back, cheering. Great idea. Perfect volunteer. The captain's apprentice should do it. Kobe groaned, burying his face in his hands. He'd rather face Foxy's whole crew than knock on that cabin door. The corridors of the Shadow Sorrow were unusually quiet, the air heavy with muffled laughter and the occasional thump of movement from behind closed doors. Kobe's feet felt like lead as he crept toward the captain's cabin, every step echoing in his ears like a drum of doom. He reached the door. His hand hovered, trembling, just shy of knocking. And then, through the wood came the unmistakable sound of giggling. "Oh, please, Mr. Dragon," Nami's voice purred, dripping with playful mockery. "We're just poor princesses at your mercy." Kobe's face turned crimson. "Oh no, oh no, oh no, oh no." Hancock's sultry laugh followed, rich and teasing. "Yes, two helpless maidens, be gentle with us, my lord." Kobe slapped both hands over his face, his ears burning. Why me? But he had no choice. Swallowing hard, he raised a fist and knocked. Instantly, Hancock's voice snapped through the door, sharp as a whip. "We are busy. Get lost." Kobe winced. "See, Captain, it's important." All three voices roared at once. "We're busy. Piss off." Kobe nearly bolted then and there. His knees shook. But he forced the words out, his voice cracking. Some guy is challenging you to AD Davy back fight. He said if you don't accept, you're a coward. Silence. Then, suddenly, the lock clicked. The door creaked open. Kobe froze. Luffy stood there, scowling darkly, a bathrobe hanging loosely from his shoulders. His hair was a mess, his eyes blazing with irritation. And behind him, Nami and Hancock stood side by side. To Kobe's utter horror, they were both dressed in gaudy silk princess gowns, tiaras crooked on their heads, skirts swishing around bare feet. The two women smirked like cats caught mid-game. Kobe's jaw nearly hit the floor. What the? Luffy's voice was cold, stripped of its usual warmth. Where is he? The air itself seemed to drop 10 degrees. Kobe's heart leapt into his throat. He swallowed hard, trembling, and pointed back toward the deck. He's on the beach, Captain. See calling you out. Luffy's grin spread, slow and dangerous. Good. He tightened the bathrobe's belt and stepped past Kobe, the sound of his bare feet echoing against the floorboards. Hancock and Nami trailed behind him, tiaras glinting, eyes gleaming with mischief. The door slammed shut behind them, leaving Kobe trembling in the hallway, his face still scarlet. The beach was already a circus. Foxy strutted back and forth in the sand, chest puffed out, his crew trying to look fierce while visibly trembling. Hamburger had gone pale as milk, and Porch kept whispering frantic prayers under her breath. The Shadow Dragon pirates gathered in a half-circle, arms folded, smirks tugging at their faces as they waited. Most were laughing quietly, not at Foxy, but at the thought of what was about to happen. Then the cabin door slammed open. Luffy stormed out onto the deck of the Shadow Sorrow, his bathrobe flapping open at the chest, hair wild, eyes burning with irritation. Behind him glided Hancock and Nami, both clad in over-the-top princess gowns, tiaras perched proudly on their heads. The entire beach fell silent. Foxy's jaw dropped. His legs buckled as sweat poured down his face. What the hell? Even his crew stopped mid-cheer, blinking in confusion. On the Shadow Dragon's side, the pirates all exchanged looks. Kaya's eyes widened. Usopp's jaw hit the sand. Sanji instantly collapsed into a puddle of blood and tears. Zoro groaned and covered his face with one hand. Robin sipped calmly from her wine cup but her shoulders shook with suppressed laughter. Wait, why is the captain in a bathrobe? Pudding whispered, face red. And why are Nami and Hancock dressed like princesses? Kuro muttered, adjusting his glasses. There was a long pause as realization rippled through both crews. Then, almost in unison. Oh. Every face turned beet red. Half the Shadow Dragon pirates burst out laughing. The other half groaned and shook their heads. Are you kidding me? Sanji wailed from the sand, slamming his forehead against it. 4 days wasn't enough. Foxy swallowed hard, his confidence crumbling. He had expected to face the feared Shadow Dragon, but this was worse. Somehow, seeing Luffy in a bathrobe, flanked by tiara-wearing empresses, made him 10 times more terrifying. Luffy didn't speak at first. He just walked down the gangplank, the sand crunching beneath his bare feet. His eyes locked on Foxy with a glare that could have cracked stone. "Why you look busy," Foxy stammered, hands flapping nervously. Maybe we reschedule the Davy back, Another time, another island, no hard feel." Luffy's aura flared, shadows licking off his shoulders like smoke. His grin stretched slow and cold. "You called me a coward," he said. Foxy's blood ran cold. His crew whimpered. "Why yeah, but only in the friendly pirate tradition sense." Too late. Luffy stepped forward, each stride heavy with menace. The bathrobe fluttered, revealing the scars and muscle beneath, the aura of a man who had torn down emperors. "Where's the arena?" Luffy asked flatly. Foxy's lips trembled. For a heartbeat, he considered running, abandoning his crew, everything. But then Porch hissed in his ear, "Captain, if we survive this, you'll have a crew of monsters at your Kumlone," kept him standing. Barely. Arena. Why yes, of course. He yelped, sweat pouring down his forehead. "Right this way, Shadow Dragon Sama. 5 rounds, fair and square." Ha ha ha, ha. The laugh died in his throat. Behind Luffy, Hancock and Nami shared a knowing smirk, their gowns swishing dramatically in the wind. The Shadow Dragon pirates followed in a row, some laughing, others shaking their heads, all of them ready to watch the slaughter. And Foxy. He prayed to every god and devil of the sea that he would live to regret this. The beach fell silent as the air grew heavy, thick with a pressure that pressed down on every chest. Foxy's smug grin twitched, his crew fidgeting nervously. Luffy took another step forward. Then his body rippled, shadows spilling like smoke, wings unfurling with a roar that shook the sand. His bathrobe shredded in an instant, dissolving into tatters as his form expanded, bones cracking and flesh stretching. Before their eyes, the Shadow Dragon stood revealed in his full beast form. A massive, black-scaled dragon towered over the beach, wings blotting out the sun. Shadows coiled along his body like living chains, his eyes burning molten gold. Steam hissed from his nostrils with each breath, scalding the sand beneath him. The foxy pirates collapsed instantly, their knees buckling. Hamburger nearly fainted, squealing in terror. Portia's face went ghost-white as she clutched her captain's sleeve. The enormous head lowered, scales glinting like obsidian. Luffy's eyes locked on Foxy, who was shaking so hard his teeth chattered. When he spoke, it was in a voice that made the sea itself tremble, a deep, almost demonic rumble that echoed like thunder. "Let's do this, or get lost." Steam blasted from his nostrils, washing over Foxy and his trembling crew. "Is that clear?" The words hit harder than cannon fire. For a heartbeat, Foxy stood frozen, his mouth opening and closing like a fish. Then, "RR retreat," he shrieked, spinning on his heels. His legs blurred in cartoon panic as he bolted for the tree line, screaming like a child. "Sea Captain, wait for us." Porch wailed, sprinting after him. Hamburger tripped over his own feet but scrambled up, tears streaming as he chased them. The rest of the foxy pirates scattered like leaves in a storm, their screams fading into the jungle. Silence followed, broken only by the hiss of steam and the pounding of the dragon's heartbeat. The Shadow Dragon pirates stared in awe, some laughing, others shaking their heads. Zoro sheathed his blades with a snort. "TCH. Didn't even need us." Usopp threw his arms in the air. "I knew they'd run. Who wouldn't?" Sanji lit a cigarette, muttering, "Lucky bastards. Even got spared the beating." Yamato crossed her arms, grinning up at the massive dragon. "Hey, guess that settles that." Katakuri simply nodded, as if it had been obvious from the start. Luffy lowered his massive head, golden eyes blazing. Then, with a final snort of steam, his monstrous form shimmered, collapsing back into human shape. Standing on the sand, still half in tatters from the transformation, he smirked. Guess they weren't serious. The crew erupted in laughter, the tension gone. The battle was over before it began. The foxy pirates would never dare show their faces again. The foxy pirates were long gone, their screams still echoing faintly from the jungle, but the Shadow Dragon pirates were still buzzing with laughter. On the main deck, Luffy sat cross-legged with Hancock draped elegantly on one side and Nami lounging smugly on the other. His grin had faded into something colder, the look of a captain about to lecture. "All right, Listen up, Luffy said, his voice carrying across the deck. This time, I'll let it slide. Foxy called me a coward, yeah, but he wasn't worth the effort. The laughter died down. The crew leaned in, paying attention. But from now on, his eyes narrowed, shadows flickering faintly behind him. Nobody interrupts me and my wives. The only exception, he jabbed a finger at the deck, is if an admiral shows up. Got it. A chill rolled across the deck. Even Usopp gulped. Otherwise, Luffy growled, Yamato and Katakuri can handle it. Why yes, Captain. The crew chorused, some saluting, others nodding frantically. Usopp, still pale, raised his hand timidly. So, Captain. Just one question. His eyes flicked nervously toward Nami and Hancock. Why were they in princess dresses? Every head turned. Hancock only smiled serenely, unbothered. Nami, however, smirked with devilish glee. Oh, that, she purred, stretching like a cat. We were just playing. Two poor princesses, and the big bad dragon. The words hit like cannon fire. We're going to need therapy. Pudding yelped, covering her face. Brule clapped her hands over her ears. I didn't need to hear that image. Mikita shrieked into her palms. Tashigi turned scarlet and nearly fainted. Usopp collapsed, twitching. Even Zoro groaned. For the love of, why'd you have to say it out loud? The deck erupted into chaos. Kobe, pale as a ghost, sank to his knees. His eyes were haunted, his voice flat. At least you didn't hear them like I did. When I delivered the message. The crew froze, turning toward him. His face said everything, the trauma of overhearing every sultry word burned into his memory. Sanji suddenly dropped to the deck, pounding it with both fists. Not fair. He roared, tears streaming down his face. Half the crew burst out laughing again. The other half groaned, clutching their faces. Luffy only smirked, wrapping his arms around his wives as they giggled at the chaos. Then it's settled. No more interruptions, unless it's an admiral. The rules were clear. The sea ahead was calm. And the Shadow Dragon pirates sailed on, laughter trailing behind them like a storm waiting to break. The Shadow Sorrow glided through the glittering waves, her black sails fluttering lazily in the wind. The world was, for once, quiet. Foxy and his ridiculous crew were somewhere far behind them, hopefully still running. For a ship crewed by lunatics, killers, and demigods, this was about as close to normal as it got. With Luffy, Hancock, and Nami in pre-honeymoon mode, and refusing to leave their cabin, Yamato and Katakuri had taken command. The Oni princess barked orders from the helm while sipping sake straight from the bottle. Keep her steady. And if anyone touches the rum stash, I'll feed you to Salome. Meanwhile, on the training deck, chaos had its own rhythm. Tashigi, still mastering both Enma and her newly awakened float fruit, was sparring against Smoothie, a towering wall of muscle and confidence. Every clash of steel sent waves of pressure across the deck. Focus your hockey, girl, Smoothie taunted, parrying effortlessly. If you can't control your sword, it'll control you. Easy for you to say. Tashigi gritted her teeth, floating a few inches off the ground as her blade shimmered violet. Across the deck, Katakuri was an unmovable statue amid the chaos, his trident humming with restrained power. Kobe, drenched in sweat, bounced around him with rubber-like agility, trying to land a hit. Come on, kid, Katakuri said calmly, sidestepping a gum-gum pistol. If you're going to attack, at least do it right. Nearby, Robin, Kaya, Vivi, Alvida, and Brule watched, attempting to follow Katakuri's observation hockey lesson. He could read a heartbeat, a lie, or a death wish like an open book, and every one of them wanted a taste of that power. Brule sighed dramatically. My brother makes this look easy. Robin smirked. Yes, terrifyingly easy. Up on the deck's port side, Usopp, Gem, and Viper were elbow-deep in the ship's artillery. So, hear me out, Usopp said, grinning like a mad scientist. If we fire Gem out of the cannon. No. But think of the explosion. No. Fine, but it would have been awesome, Usopp muttered, sulking while Viper loaded new shells. In the kitchen, the aroma of sizzling spices and caramel filled the air. Sanji, Mikita, and Pudding worked in perfect rhythm, if you ignored the fact that Sanji was hard-eyeing both girls and burning the soup. Focus, Arrow cook, Mikita scolded, whacking him with a ladle. Pudding giggled, whispering, he's hopeless. Little Isa snuck around their feet, helping, by handing treats to Salome and Richie, who lounged by the counter like royalty. Every time Sanji turned around, something had mysteriously vanished from the tray. For a brief moment, the shadow sorrow felt almost peaceful, training, laughter, and the hum of a family that had seen hell and made it home. But far off, on the horizon, the sea began to mist and shimmer, like frost creeping over glass. Lunch is ready. Sanji's voice echoed across the ship like a dinner bell from heaven. Even Yamato perked up, stretching her arms and letting out a satisfied yawn. Finally, I was about to eat Kobe's glasses. Katakuri adjusted his scarf and nodded. A good meal will keep the crew sharp. Tell everyone to take 5. Actually, Yamato said, leaning on the railing with a mischievous grin, why don't we dock? There's an island nearby, looks peaceful. Let's have a picnic. Captain's busy with, important, honeymoon diplomacy. Katakuri gave her a look. By diplomacy, you mean? Don't, Yamato interrupted with a smirk. Let them bond. A few minutes later, the shadow sorrow anchored beside a lush green island dotted with palm trees and a wide, glittering lagoon. The air was warm, the sky painted in lazy blues and golds. The crew spread out blankets, unpacked Sanji's feast, and for a blissful hour, everything was perfect. Zoro lounged under a tree, snoring with a bottle of rum on his chest. Kuro and Vivi played chess using seashells. Kobe helped Isa build a sand fort big enough to hide a cannon in. Smoothie and Brûlée were locked in a drinking contest while Makita took bets. Sanji twirled across the picnic like a proud chef, presenting plates of seafood curry, grilled crab, and tropical fruit tarts. Dig in, everyone, he announced dramatically. Cooked with passion, perfection, and a little lust. Too much information. Vivi coughed, laughing as Alvida sprayed juice from her nose. It was peace, loud, messy, and wonderful. That peace shattered when Tashigi, Robin, and Chopper decided to explore the island's forest. We'll be back soon, Tashigi called. Maybe there's something useful inland. 10 minutes later, their screams tore through the calm. Every head snapped toward the sound. Yamato dropped her drink instantly. Weapons, now. The crew charged into the jungle. Branches snapped, sand flew, hearts pounded. When they reached the clearing, Chopper was standing alone, wide-eyed and trembling. I don't understand, I smelled him, but, it can't be. Robin and Tashigi were both pale as ghosts. Their eyes locked on the rocky outcrop ahead. And there he was, sitting casually on a smooth boulder, legs crossed, hands in his pockets, a long marine coat draped around him. His breath misted the air, and the ground beneath him glittered with thin frost. Admiral Aokiji. Even the breeze froze. Yamato's jaw tightened, her hand gripping her kanabo. Katakuri's expression darkened, the air around him rippling like heat haze. Smoothie's usual smirk vanished. Pudding, Vivi, and Brûlée all paled, eyes wide with disbelief. Aokiji opened one eye lazily, his voice calm but cold enough to bite. So, this is the infamous Shadow Dragon crew. Guess I finally caught up to you. The laughter, the warmth, their moment of peace, died in an instant. The temperature began to fall. The air was crisp and silent. Frost slowly crept along the grass, curling around the crew's boots like ghostly fingers. Admiral Aokiji sat slouched on his rock, half asleep, one hand resting on his knee while the other lazily scratched his neck. If not for the cold rolling off him, he could have been mistaken for a hobo on vacation. He cracked one eye open, his voice low and drowsy. So, where's your captain? Don't tell me he's hiding behind his ladies again. Before anyone could answer, his gaze shifted, and for the first time, his calm demeanor faltered. Wait a second, he blinked. You've gotta be kidding me. Charlotte Katakuri, Smoothie, and Brûlée. Former Big Mom commanders, now playing pirates with Monkey D. Luffy. What the hell did I miss? Brûlée crossed her arms smugly. We upgraded, icy boy. Less family drama, more pay. Smoothie smirked, cracking her neck. And a far better captain. Aokiji sighed, slumping even more. Yeah, I can tell. Only Luffy could make that kind of mess. Then his gaze drifted to Tashigi. His eyes sharpened for a brief moment, his usual lazy tone gaining a hint of familiarity. Well, last time I saw you, you were still saluting in a too big uniform. He stood, towering over her as frost whispered off his coat. Didn't expect to see a marine with pirates. Tashigi tensed, gripping her sword. I'm no marine anymore. I can see that, Aokiji said, touching her forehead lightly with one cold finger. A harmless jolt of frost made her flinch. Relax. I'm not here to arrest anyone. I was just napping here when, lucky me, a former marine and the devil of Ohara walked right into my nap spot. His eyes slid toward Robin, who folded her arms but didn't move. Guess that makes my job easier, he continued. I was supposed to find your captain. Seems the world government really wants a word with him, again. Katakori's voice was calm but iron hard. You're not taking him anywhere. Aokiji lifted his hands in mock surrender. Easy, go boy, I'm just asking a question. From behind Katakori, Usopp nervously raised his hand. Funny story about that, Admiral. Luffy's kinda unavailable right now. Aokiji blinked. Unavailable? What's that supposed to mean? Usopp gulped. He just, got Mariek. They're, celebrating, in their cabin. Silence. Even the birds stopped chirping. Aokiji's half-open eyes suddenly widened. He stood straight, jaw dropping. He married both of them. Katakori just sighed. Smoothie hid a chuckle behind her hand. Brule grinned wickedly. Oh, yes. And they've been very busy. Aokiji rubbed the bridge of his nose, muttering, unbelievable. The brat actually pulled two of the hottest women on the seas, lucky bastard. The air between the Shadow Dragon crew and the lazy admiral hung thick with tension. Aokiji had barely moved since his, lucky bastard, comment, still half lounging on his icy boulder, while Yamato and Katakori stood ready to rumble. Yamato cracked her neck and rested her kanabo on her shoulder. Katakori, I don't mind fighting him, but if it's Luffy he wants, he'll get Luffy. She turned toward the ship. Kobe, go fetch the captain. Kobe froze like a statue. No, absolutely not. The last time I went to get them, I saw things. I still have nightmares. Yamato's smile twitched. What did you just say, soldier? I refuse, ma'am. My sanity's worth more than my rank. The entire crew turned to stare. You could almost hear the creak of Yamato's patience breaking. But before she could explode, Vivi sighed dramatically and rolled her eyes. Oh, for the love of, fine. I'll get him. You people act like walking to a door is a death sentence. She stepped back, her form shimmering. With a burst of golden sand and fur, she shifted into her Fox of the Sands hybrid form, graceful, elegant, and fast as lightning. I'll be right back, she said, already dashing toward the ship, her tails fluttering behind her like a comet's trail. In seconds she was on the deck, the sound of training and chatter fading behind her. She landed softly in front of the captain's cabin, the den of debauchery, as Sanji had quietly named it. The air was heavy with suspicious warmth and perfume. Vivi raised a trembling hand to knock. Then she froze. A voice from inside, Hancock's unmistakable drawl. Hey, Nami, don't put your tail there. It tickles. Vivi's entire face turned crimson. Her tails bristled like a spooked cat's. There was a pause, followed by Nami's voice, breathy and teasing. Oh, you love it, you snake queen. Vivi's eye twitched. I hate my life. From somewhere deeper in the room came Luffy's laugh, lazy, satisfied, and far too happy. You two are crazy. Ha ha ha. Don't spill the rum again. Vivi squeezed her eyes shut and muttered a silent prayer to whatever gods ruled the seas. Then, before she could lose her nerve, she banged her fist on the door. Captain, you're wanted outside. Right now. There was a shuffle, a crash, and Nami's muffled voice, oh, come on, we were just getting to the good part. Outside. Vivi barked, tail lashing, face bright red. A second later, the door cracked open. Luffy's head poked out, shirtless, hair a mess, grin wide as ever. Hancock and Nami were behind him, equally disheveled and glowing with that unmistakable, we shouldn't look this smug, energy. Luffy blinked. What's wrong? We're kinda busy. Vivi sighed, ears drooping. Aokiji. He's here. The smile vanished. The ground around the clearing was half frozen, half steaming from the tension in the air. The sound of footsteps broke through the silence, slow, confident, and deliberate. Monkey D. Luffy emerged from the trees, flanked by his wives Boa Hancock and Nami. The crew parted as the trio approached, and even Aokiji lifted his head a little higher. Luffy looked relaxed, arms folded, the faint smirk on his lips betraying nothing. Didn't expect to see you here, Aokiji. What's a lazy admiral like you doing this far from Marine HQ? Aokiji let out a low whistle. Long time no see, Dragon Punk. The nickname froze the air even more than his devil fruit could. A few of the crew stiffened, even Katakori's calm expression tightened. Hancock narrowed her eyes, ready to strike if Aokiji made one wrong move. Aokiji stood, dusting frost from his coat. Fortunate, really. I didn't expect to find you here, but you've made my job easier. I was sent to confirm whether Nico Robin was still traveling with you. His gaze flicked toward Robin, who stared back calmly, her arms crossed. And, to my surprise, I find you've recruited some rather heavy hitters. His eyes lingered on Katakori, Smoothie, and Brûlé. Ex-commanders of Big Mom, now serving under the Shadow Dragon himself. That's quite the resume you're building, Straw Hat. Luffy tilted his head, grin widening. Hey, that's not even the half of it, Admiral. Aokiji raised a brow. Oh, enlighten me. Luffy's grin turned dangerous. You should be thanking me, actually. I did you all a favor. How's that? Aokiji asked, voice still calm but his breath misting heavier. I killed Shiki. For once, Aokiji's composure cracked. You what? Yeah, Luffy said simply, shrugging. Took his head clean off. And his devil fruit. He turned, pointing straight at Tashigi, who stepped forward, the air around her shimmering faintly as the power of the float fruit hummed in response. She inherited it, Luffy finished. Aokiji's mouth parted slightly. You're telling me that kid has Shiki's power. The Golden Lions. Luffy said, hands behind his head, like it was the most casual thing in the world. You should have seen it. His last words were boring, though. I expected more from a legend. For a long moment, no one spoke. Even the wind held its breath. Aokiji looked from Tashigi to Luffy, his normally lazy eyes filled with something different, not fear, not anger, but respect mixed with disbelief. You've changed, he said finally, voice low. Or maybe, you're not the same man anymore. Luffy's shadow rippled across the frost, his grin dark and sharp. You could say that, Ice Man. The temperature dropped again, only this time, it wasn't from Aokiji alone. Aokiji's lips curled into a lazy smile, frosty breath curling the air. Well, now that that's out of the way, he said, voice like distant ice, I'll leave you, your crew, and your 2 super boob wives. His offhand nickname earned a simultaneous, furious chorus of, hey. From Nami and Hancock, a sound half outraged, half amused that cut the clearing like a blade. He folded his arms. But Nico Robin is a government target, and that former Marine, Tashigi, has become too dangerous to be left unchecked. I'm taking them in. His stare slid toward Robin and then to Tashigi, cold but earnest. You'll understand why when I bring them back. Silence slammed down. Katakori's grip on his trident tightened like a coiled spring. Yamato's jaw set. Even Brûlé's smirk thinned. Luffy moved like a shadow uncoiling. He unsheathed Shadow Slicer in one fluid motion, the black blade drank the light and hummed with hunger. Darkness pooled at his feet as he shifted into the hybrid shadow that lived at the edge of his grin. His voice came low, flat, and suddenly lethal. Aokiji, he said, calm as the sea before a storm, you so much as touch my crew, I'll shatter that ice head of yours and use it as ice cubes to cool my drink. The words landed like a dropped anchor. For a second, the island tasted metal. Aokiji blinked once. Then, as if impressed, he smiled. I like to see you try, punk. He pushed himself to his feet, frost cracking like glass around him. Just because you and I have history doesn't mean I won't perform my duty. Hancock stepped forward, chest heaving, venom in her eyes. You will not touch my crew and try one more joke about my chest and I'll turn you into a statue for fun. She snarled, voice layered with 3 different threats. Nami's nails dug into her palm, her tail flicked dangerously. Quote. Katakori's trident whispered across his palms. We don't want to fight you, Admiral, he said, voice like tempered steel. But we will end you if you force our hand. Aokiji's expression softened for the barest moment, respect flickering under the chill. I don't want to fight you either, he admitted, man who used to nap on sea rocks. There are things under the surface, orders, that I can't ignore. Kobe, finally finding his voice, stepped forward, knuckles white. There are orders and there are people. He barked. You are a marine, you know. Aokiji's gaze cut through him like sleet. I know enough, he said. That's why I'm here. The temperature dropped again, and the line between duty and defiance sharpened into steel. Luffy's grin narrowed. Shadow flickered along Shadow Slicer's edge, hungry. Fine, he said. We'll fight. If you want Robin and Tashigi, you can try to take them. But don't say I didn't warn you. Aokiji inhaled, the cold gathering like a storm. Then show me the strength of this, Shadow Dragon, he murmured. The crew stilled, a heartbeat before the world split into motion. Rocks shifted. Frost bit the leaves. The first crack of power was about to come down. The island groaned beneath them. Trees cracked under a sheet of spreading frost while the ground around Luffy pulsed with waves of living darkness. Crew, stay out of this, Luffy ordered without looking back. His voice carried that hard, quiet authority that froze even Yamato in place. This is between me and him. Aokiji tilted his head, lips curling. Protective, huh? You've grown up. He stomped once, a glacier erupted under his feet. Let's see how far that growth goes. The world blurred. Aokiji vanished in a streak of pale blue, reappearing behind Luffy with a blade of ice drawn from his palm. Luffy twisted, Shadow Slicer meeting it in a flash of black sparks. The collision split the clearing, frost against darkness, each refusing to yield. Aokiji's breath came in puffs of vapor. You're faster than I remember. You're slower, Luffy shot back, kneeing him in the gut hard enough to send him sliding through his own ice. Fissures opened across the island as black tendrils snaked from Luffy's feet, wrapping around frozen boulders and crushing them to dust. He moved like a living storm, every slash of Shadow Slicer releasing waves of dark flame that hissed and steamed against the Admiral's cold. Aokiji raised a wall of crystal frost to block him. Ice Age. The temperature plummeted, even the clouds above froze into shards of white glass. For a heartbeat, everything stopped. Then Luffy laughed, a deep, low rumble that rolled like thunder. Shadows exploded from his back, forming the spectral wings of his dragon form. He tore through the glacier with one massive strike, the impact sending a shockwave that blew the trees flat. Steam rose from his skin, half from heat, half from the cold biting deep. His breath fogged, but his grin burned brighter than ever. You'll have to do better than that, Aokiji. Aokiji landed lightly, sliding backward across a path of ice. His arm was rimmed with frost cracks, the black burn from Luffy's haki and darkness ate through the cold. Hey, you're getting frostbite, Dragon Boy. Luffy flexed his hand, ice shattered off his knuckles. I don't care. His eyes glowed red through the mist. You're the one shaking. He vanished, moving so fast the air screamed, and drove a fist into Aokiji's ribs. The blow carried the weight of thunder and the roar of shadows. Aokiji gasped, skidding backward, freezing the ground to slow himself. Each impact shattered ice, each clash lit the island with flashes of black and blue. The crew watched from the ridge, the air too cold to breathe, too charged to speak. Hancock's hand tightened on Nami's. He's winning, she whispered. Nami nodded, though her breath came out white. Yeah, but the cold's getting to him. Frost crawled up Luffy's arm as he blocked another spear of ice. His shadow form flickered, but his smile didn't. He slammed Shadow Slicer into the ground, the earth erupting in a geyser of darkness that swallowed the Admiral whole. When the blast cleared, Aokiji was on one knee, frost melting off his coat. Still reckless as ever, he muttered. Dragon's blood or not, you're still Luffy. Luffy's chest rose and fell, steam mixing with mist. Yeah, he said, voice low and hoarse. And I'm still not done yet. The storm of shadow and ice surged again, each strike louder, brighter, until the island itself began to tremble. The wind howled softly across the shattered clearing. Steam rose from the ground where darkness and frost had collided, turning the air into a heavy fog. Luffy stood motionless, chest heaving, Shadow Slicer still embedded in the frozen earth. His breath came out in ragged bursts of steam. Across from him, Aokiji straightened, brushing shards of black ice from his coat. For a long, silent moment, it looked like he might strike again. Then, to everyone's shock, he simply sighed. Okay, he muttered, voice flat, calm, and utterly casual. Fight's over. The words hung there like a punchline no one understood. What? Zoro blinked. Katakuri lowered his trident, frowning. You're calling it off. Aokiji rolled his shoulders, frost crackling off his jacket. Yeah, you win this round. I've seen what I needed to see. Luffy raised an eyebrow. That's it. No arrest, no ice prison, no dramatic speech about justice. Aokiji smirked faintly. I've got better things to do than lose a leg today. And besides, he reached for the sleek blue bicycle leaning against a tree. You've got that look your old man used to have, the try me and die look. I'm too lazy to test it. He swung a leg over the bike, humming quietly as he checked the tires, frost forming around the rims. Oh, that reminds me, he said casually, as if discussing the weather. Word from Marine HQ, there's a new candidate for the warlord position. Calls himself Blackbeard. Says he'll earn the title by bringing you in. The silence that followed could have frozen fire. Nami blinked, her expression flipping from confusion to fury. Wait, what? That disgusting traitor. Luffy's smile vanished. His shadow twitched. So that's what that bastard's up to, he murmured, voice low enough to send a chill through even Aokiji. Trying to hide behind the government after what he did, but seriously, he looked up, eyes burning red, he thinks he can bring me in. Katakuri's arms folded. He's insane. Hancock's voice was velvet and venom. He'll regret the day he even spoke your name. Nami cracked her knuckles. Oh, I'll make sure of that. Aokiji gave a half smile, pushing the pedal once. Good luck with that. I'm not getting involved. But if you want my advice, he looked over his shoulder, eyes half-lidded but serious for once. Don't underestimate him. The darkness around that man makes even yours feel warm. He pressed down, and the bicycle glided forward. Frost burst beneath the tires, forming an ice path that stretched out over the ocean. In seconds, Aokiji was coasting away across the sea, whistling some lazy tune as gulls scattered overhead. The crew watched in stunned silence as his figure faded into the horizon. Finally, Luffy exhaled, rolling his shoulders and cracking his neck. Well, that was weird. Yamato laughed nervously. You think? Nami smirked, slipping her arm around him. So what now, Captain? Luffy grinned, teeth flashing in the dying light. Now, we head for Water 7. I've got a ship to fix, and a rat to crush. 2 days had passed since the clash with Aokiji, but the air on the Shadow Sorrow still carried that faint chill, like the ocean itself remembered. The skies had cleared, though, and the crew finally felt the calm returning. Laughter, song, and the usual shouting matches filled the deck once again. Land ahead. Usopp's voice rang out from the crow's nest. And, something else. Looks like a train. On the ocean. Am I seeing things, or did someone spike my coffee again? The crew gathered at the railing. Sure enough, a gleaming metal train roared across the water's surface, kicking up waves of foam as it thundered by on rails of solid sea. What in the nine hells is that? Yamato yelled, tail flicking. It's a train, Robin said with a soft smile, pushing her hair base, traveling across the ocean. Chopper's eyes sparkled. A sea train. That's amazing. As if on cue, the train slowed slightly as it neared a small station built onto a reef. A green-haired woman in overalls and a scarf waved cheerfully from the platform, flanked by a little girl riding on the back of a blue rabbit. Ahoy there! The woman called out. You folks lost. This is the Puffing Tom line. You're not far from Water 7 if you keep heading east. Luffy grinned and waved back. Thanks, lady. We're looking for that city anyway. Then you're on the right track. She shouted, laughing at her own pun. Name's Kokura, and this here's my granddaughter Chimney. Hiya. Chimney chirped, waving so hard she almost fell off the rabbit's back. You're funny-looking pirates. Usopp facepalmed. Even the kids roast us now. Luffy just laughed. Thanks for the directions. Tell your train to watch out, or I might try to race it. With a final wave, the Shadow Sorrow steered eastward, the glinting tracks of the sea train vanishing behind them. Within hours, the silhouette of a sprawling city rose ahead. Water 7, the city of shipwrights, glimmering with canals, glass domes, and bridges that wove across blue waterways like veins of light. The entire crew leaned over the rail, wide-eyed. Vivi gasped softly. It's beautiful, a city floating on water. Chopper's jaw dropped. It's like a dream. Sanji twirled in delight. And full of gorgeous women, no doubt. Luffy planted his fists on his hips, grinning from ear to ear. All right, listen up. We've got 3 things to do here. He raised a finger. First, we go to the Galila company. Second finger, we exchange the gold we got from Skypia. And the third, since the ship's getting upgrades, we need a place to stay. Nami crossed her arms, already in planner mode. Leave that last part to me, she said with a sly smile. I'll book us some rooms. Zoro groaned. That tone's never good. Usopp whispered to Kobe, she's gonna rob us blind again, isn't she? Kobe just sighed. I'm still recovering from the poker game from last month. Luffy laughed, completely oblivious. Perfect. Then it's settled. Next stop, Galila. And with that, the Shadow Sorrow sailed proudly into the shining canals of Water 7, unaware that comedy, chaos, and a cramped disaster of a hotel were waiting just ahead. Night had fallen over Water 7, the city lights glittering like jewels on the canals. The Shadow Sorrow was moored safely, and after a long day of travel, everyone was ready to crash on soft beds and enjoy the luxury of civilization. Nami returned with a confident sway in her hips and a fat stack of papers. All right, everyone. I've booked us rooms in the best hotel in Water 7. The Aqua Crown. The crew erupted in cheers. Finally. A bed that's not moving, cried Usopp. I'm gonna sleep for 12 hours straight, groaned Zoro. Chopper bounced happily. Did they have hot baths? Sanji twirled. Did they have beautiful baths? Luffy grinned, wrapping an arm around Hancock and Nami. Good job, honey. You're the best. Nami winked smugly. I know. 10 minutes later, that smugness died. The best hotel was indeed impressive, marble floors, chandeliers, and a golden lobby. But when the crew got their keys, something was off. Katakuri squinted at his key. Room 2C. Shared. Vivi frowned. Wait, shared. Moments later, the entire crew stood in disbelief as they realized Nami had booked the cheapest, tiniest rooms in the entire building. The beds were barely large enough for one person, and some of the rooms didn't even have windows. Kobe and Isa's room was literally a broom closet with a single pillow and a bucket. Isa's tiny voice echoed down the hall. Kobe, there's a mop in my bed. Kobe groaned. Just, don't move. I see a large rat. In the hallway, chaos erupted. Zoro, Katakuri, and Viper stared at their three-person room. One bed, no space. Smoothie, Alvida, and Kaya squeezed into another, their combined strength cracking the walls. Brule, Vivi, and Makita argued over blanket rights in the third. Robin, Pudding, and Smoothie took the fourth, debating who snored louder. Yamato, Tashigi, and Chopper ended up with Salome and Richie in theirs, the animals taking the whole floor. The sixth, Gem, Usopp, Kuro, and Sanji. The poor cook sat in a corner muttering, "This is hell." Nami tried to laugh it off. See, come on, guys. Money's tight. We need to save for the ship repairs. Before she could finish, the hotel manager walked up, bowing politely. Ah, Miss Nami. Your penthouse suite is prepared. A king-sized bed, private balcony, champagne service for you and your two companions, Mr. Luffy and Lady Hancock. Every head turned. Nami froze mid-sentence. Ah, that, penthouse. Yamato roared. You said we were broke. Vivi's voice was low and terrifying. So broke the treasurer didn't even approve it. Nami took one slow step backward, smiling nervously. I can explain. Get her, yelled Usopp. The crew surged like a mob. Nami shrieked, sprinting down the hall. Honey, help me. Luffy sighed, catching her mid-run with one arm. All right, enough. Calm down, everyone. His tone cut through the shouting like steel. Tomorrow, Nami will book everyone decent rooms, and it's coming out of her pocket, not the crew's funds. Vivi, as treasurer, crossed her arms. Agreed. And Nami's temporarily banned from accessing the funds. Nami burst into tears. Unfair. You're all heartless. Still sniffling, she retreated with her husband and wife to their luxury suite while the rest of the crew crammed themselves into tiny rooms across the hall. As lights went out, muffled groans and arguments filled the corridors. Kobe whispered from the broom closet, Isa, your elbow's in my face. That's the rat, she grumbled. And somewhere high above, in the penthouse suite, Nami sighed contentedly. Soft bed, private bath, champagne, totally worth it. Hancock stretched beside her, smiling slyly. Until tomorrow morning, my love. Luffy just laughed, sinking into the pillows. They'll forgive you, eventually. The next morning came bright and golden, sunlight spilling over the city's rooftops and filtering through the tall windows of the Grand Coral Hotel. Despite most of the crew being stuck in tight rooms, the atmosphere was surprisingly cheerful. The only ones who had slept in true luxury were, of course, the captain and his two spouses. Luffy, Hancock, and Nami had spent the night in the penthouse suite, an ocean view paradise with silk sheets, gold-trimmed furniture, and a private bath big enough to swim in. Meanwhile, the rest of the Shadow Dragon pirates had shared smaller, cramped quarters below, much to Sanji's dismay. But Luffy, in his typical fashion, decided to make up for it. He had booked the entire dining hall. For breakfast, a lavish buffet of roasted meats, pastries, fruit towers, and fountains of chocolate and coffee. Unfortunately, every last belly had come straight out of Nami's pocket, courtesy of Luffy's punishment system for her recent schemes. Nami sat at the head of the long dining table, her eyes twitching as she calculated the damages in her head. 200,000 for the room service, 150,000 for the hall, another 80 for the damn flower arrangements. Luffy, I swear you're worse than the world government. Luffy grinned, mouth full of steak. You can't put a price on happiness, Nami. Yes, I can. It's exactly 430,000 belly so far. She snapped, stabbing her fork into a pile of fruit like she wanted it to be his face. Hancock only smirked, sipping her tea with queenly grace. Think of it as a small price to pay for being loved by the Shadow Dragon and the Snake Princess, she said, leaning on Luffy's arm. That's easy for you to say, you don't have a budget spreadsheet. The rest of the crew wisely kept quiet. Sanji was too busy drooling over the buffet to interfere, Zoro was already half asleep in his chair, and Robin hid her amusement behind a polite smile. Katakuri quietly ate in perfect composure while Yamato cheerfully downed sake before noon. Then, just as Nami started to cool down, Luffy suddenly stood up, slamming his hands on the table. All right everyone, meeting time. The laughter and chatter died immediately. Luffy turned toward the hotel manager, an older man in a crisp blue uniform who had been hovering nervously nearby. You can clear the room, Luffy said, flashing a grin. The manager bowed. As you requested, Captain, we'll ensure complete privacy. He gestured to the waiters, who quickly gathered the dishes and exited. The double doors shut with a solid thunk. Outside, two guards took position. Luffy had made sure of that. He'd handed the manager a very fat stack of belly to make sure no one disturbed or eavesdropped. When the last footsteps faded, the captain's grin returned, but there was a sharper edge to it now. All right, he said, resting his hands on the back of a chair. Let's talk business. The dining hall was silent for a moment, the air heavy with the scent of roasted meat and spilled sake. Luffy leaned back in his chair, his grin wide and mischievous as always. All right, he began, clapping his hands once. Here's the plan while we're in this city. But first, some good news. I called Zala last night. Robin tilted her head curiously. The casino manager. Yup, Luffy said proudly. And she says the casino's making a killing. It's amazing how suckers just throw their money away at the tables. You should have heard her laugh, it was beautiful. Kuro's eyes glinted from the far end of the table. Let me guess, he said dryly. The tables are rigged. Luffy's grin grew wicked. Yup, but only a little. We let a few people win to keep the illusion alive. But mostly, Zala and her crew bleed them dry. Every night, the Shadow Serpent casino's full of drunk nobles and crooked merchants thinking they can outsmart the house. Vivi frowned, crossing her arms. Luffy, you're not seriously stealing from people like that, are you? Luffy's expression softened a little as he looked at her. Relax, princess. Our casino's a high roller establishment. We don't let in poor souls with gambling problems. Only nobles, warlords, and rich idiots who deserve to lose a few million. He leaned forward, elbows on the table. And like I promised your father, 40% of the casino's take goes straight into the royal treasury to help Alabasta recover from the civil war. That caught everyone's attention. Even Robin's calm eyes flickered with surprise, while Yamato gave an approving nod. That's actually pretty noble of you, Captain, she said with a grin. For a pirate. Luffy shrugged. He's my ally. And besides, I told King Cobra I'd help him rebuild. Keeping promises is what captains do. Nami, however, leaned forward, her grin creeping across her face. So, how much exactly is the casino making? Luffy chuckled, taking a slow sip of his drink. Well, after we take away Alabasta's 40% cut, the casino still makes around 300 to 400 million belly a month. The words hit like a cannon blast. Nami's chair screeched against the floor as she leapt up, eyes turning into glowing berry signs. I'm rich, she shrieked. Rich, rich, rich. Honey, I love you. Before Luffy could react, Nami lunged across the table and wrapped her arms around him in a suffocating hug, shaking him like a bag of coins. You beautiful dragon, you're my gold mine. Luffy's face turned blue as he tried to breathe. Nami, air, need, air. Hancock, utterly unamused, sipped her tea and said in her calm, regal tone, my dear wife, remember, this money belongs to all of us. The captain, the crew, and the empire we are building. Nami didn't hear a word. She was too busy hugging her now very blue husband while chanting like a mantra, berry, 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 berry. Across the table, Robin quietly covered her smile, Yamato laughed so hard she nearly fell off her chair, and Sanji collapsed dramatically, weeping at the sight of Nami hugging Luffy. Katakuri just sighed. Every meeting turns into chaos with this crew, he muttered. Nami was practically glued to Luffy's chest, chanting, berry, berry, berry. While her husband turned bluer by the second. It took Hancock's regal strength and Richie's growling intervention to pry her off him. When Luffy finally inhaled a proper breath of air, he slumped back in his chair, rubbing his neck. Okay, now that I can breathe again, he wheezed, let's move on to the next part. He straightened, and the joking tone vanished. Our plans for Water 7, he said firmly. We're not just visiting, we're taking it. This city's going to become our territory, and the Galila Company will become the shipbuilding facility for our future fleet. The words hit like a shockwave. Everyone froze, forks mid-air, eyes wide, except for Hancock, Nami, Yamato, and Katakuri, who already knew. The rest of the crew erupted in whispers and disbelief. Water 7, Vivi gasped. That's one of the world government's biggest ports. Robin's brow furrowed. It's also heavily monitored, by Cypher Pole. Luffy nodded. Exactly why we're going to do it carefully. Kuro, you're up. The tall tactician stood, adjusting his glasses with a smirk. As always, Captain. He pulled a neat stack of papers from a black folder, spreading them across the table. I analyzed them last night and found several possible courses of action. He tapped the first map. First, you all need to know, the entire city is crawling with CP9. That's why we're holding this meeting here instead of aboard the Shadow Sorrow. The hotel manager may be a greedy bastard, but he's one who'll sell his own mother for a pile of cash. That makes him easy to control. A few of the crew chuckled darkly. Kuro continued, pulling several photographs from the folder and passing them around. These are the agents currently stationed in the city. This one, he pointed to a photo of a broad-shouldered man with a smug grin, is Bluno. He poses as a bartender at one of the city's more popular pubs. Zoro raised an eyebrow. A bartender Spyoto drew laughter. Kaku, Kuro said flatly, sliding the picture over. Usopp immediately started snickering. That nose. He looks like me if I was hit by a sea train. Focus, Kuro muttered. Next, Khalifa. Sanji's heart practically exploded from his chest as he gazed at her picture. A goddess. He howled, only to be silenced instantly by Pudding, who smashed a frying pan across his skull. Pervert, she hissed. Kuro ignored the chaos and continued, showing the next image, a tall, muscular man with a cold gaze. Rob Lucci. The government's dog. He kills without hesitation or mercy. At the sound of the name, Tashigi froze. She had only heard rumors, stories of Lucci's missions ending in blood and silence. But the next photo made the air itself turn cold. This, Kuro said grimly, is their commanding officer, Spandam. The moment Robin saw the image, she went rigid. Her hand shot forward, snatching the photo. Her pupils narrowed as old memories surged. Fire, screams, the Buster call. Her voice was barely a whisper. He's the reason Ohara burned. The room fell silent. Even Luffy's grin vanished. Robin's face went white-hot, veins dark at her temples. Blood roared in her ears, memory images, burning libraries, falling stone, surfaced like ghosts. For a heartbeat she was a child again, kneeling in ash. Luffy watched her for a long, quiet second, then shrugged with that careless grin of his. "Don't worry," he said softly. "You'll have your fun with him soon." Robin's head snapped up. "What do you mean?" Her voice was ice and knives. Luffy reached into the folder by his knee and pulled out a single paper. He passed it to Kuro. "Read it," he said. "I kept it for the finale." Kuro accepted the page, eyes narrowing as he scanned the neat, official stamps and crisp, cold language. He cleared his throat and read aloud, voice steady and clinical. Classified, Cipher Pull 9. Subject, Shadow Dragon Pirates heading for Water 7. Orders, do not engage targets labeled, too dangerous, unless mission parameters change. Secondary objective, make contact with Nico Robin. Her knowledge to decipher poneglyphs renders her a threat to the government. If you can persuade her to cooperate, do so quietly. She has no known loyalties, leverage promises of protection. If successful, transport subject to Eni's lobby for judgment. Keep mission profile covert, acquisition of Pluton must not be jeopardized. The dining hall felt suddenly too small, the chandeliers seemed to dim. Each syllable landed like a stone. Robin's hand trembled around the photo she still held. Her jaw worked, no sound came out. The old wound flared, hate sharpened into a white-hot blade. She whispered. They wrote my name in their plans. They sent dogs after me long before I knew. Permission to kill every one of them, she said without looking up, voice flat, venom coiled in every word. Katakori's trident tapped once on the table. You want Robin to play along, he said quietly, the judgment in his tone soft but unmistakable. Let them think they can use her. Then, he let the sentence hang. We control the game. Luffy leaned forward, shadows shifting around him like a tide. Exactly. If they think Robin's here for protection, they'll come with lies. We let them believe what they want, until they walk into the wrong room. His grin returned, but it was colder now. We don't hand her over. We use their plan against them. Robin stared at him, eyes searching his face for a crack of cruelty or a sliver of mercy. She found both. You mean, let them try to recruit me, watch them, find their moves, and then we break their necks, Yamato said bluntly, fists clenching. On our terms. Kuro folded the file shut and looked up. Captain, where did you get this? His voice carried an odd mix of admiration and disbelief. This is top tier, only someone inside the system or with real connections could access it. Luffy smirked, tipping his head toward Hancock, who sat like a jewel of calm. She gave a small smile. From our new crew member, Luffy said, chuckling. Hancock sighed, still can't believe we're bringing that mad wolf into our crew. A low murmur ran the table. Robin's lips quirked, no smile, just a narrow, dangerous thing. Good, she said. Then let them send their dogs. I'll enjoy tearing out their leashes. Luffy's grin widened into something both childish and utterly certain. Okay then, you heard Kuro, we play along. Katakori, be ready. Nobody goes anywhere alone. The crew's laughter that followed was rough, hollow, and full of iron. The war had been named, and now the Shadow Dragon crew sharpened their teeth. Kuro stood, photos in hand, and passed them down the long table like a dealer dealing fate. These are the people you'll be meeting, he said, voice flat. First, Iceberg, director of the Galila Company and mayor of Water 7. He pushed the next photo forward. And this one's Cutty Flam, Frankie. Used to call himself that. Former apprentice of Tom. Both of them trace back to the great shipwrights line. Tom built the Oro Jackson, Roger's ship. That legacy matters. Murmurs ran the table. Zoro whistled. Shipwright royalty. Usopp poked Frankie's picture, snickering at the hair. That dude looks like he swallowed a toolbox. Luffy clapped his hands, shoving a stray napkin aside. Okay, plans. Vivi, Kuro, Nami, and Tashigi, you go to the ship. Grab everything from the vaults and take the gold to the gold exchange. Convert it to cash. He jabbed a finger at each of them as he named them. Be quick, be quiet, don't piss off anyone who can actually read laws. Kuro, you'll ride with them, Luffy added. Kuro bowed and slid more maps across the table, pointing at back routes and guard shifts he'd analyzed. Luffy turned to the others. Katakori, you, Yamato, Zoro, Viper, Gem, Alvida, and Marianne, go to Galila. Negotiate the rebuild. We're stripping the ship to its hull and rebuilding with wood. He tapped the map like it was a sweet tooth he could pop. We already planned how to make it look like a normal shipyard job. You know, permits, paperwork, the boring stuff that makes grown men cry. Katakori's brow rose. What do I tell them? He asked, voice calm as ever. Luffy grinned. We discussed stripping the ship down to the hull and rebuilding it using the wood I bought on the black market 3 days ago. A silence snapped like a snapped rope. Nami's ears perked. You what? Luffy lounged back, casual as a man announcing a picnic. Oh, about that. I bought 3 whole Adam's wood trees. Cost me over 1 billion belly. He didn't even blink. Nami's eyes went silver, then gold, then full on berry. 1 billion. Her fingers dug into the table so hard the cutlery clanged. Honey, what did you just? How? Who? Luffy smiled, proud. Zala made the purchase with the casino funds. Nearly bankrupted us, but worth it. Vivi, already doing quick mental sums, frowned. Even with the casino intake, about 600 million belly, there's still a gap. Luffy shrugged like it was a sleeve. I borrowed the rest from black market creditors. We owe them 500 million. The number landed like a cannonball. Nami stood in a blur, calculations and fury colliding. You owe 500 million. You didn't ask me. You spent 1 billion without. Before she finished, Nami's panther hockey fist connected. Her fist was a black comet that met Luffy's jaw with terrible, precise politeness. He flew off his chair, a smoking lump on the floor, cheeks puffed, eyes watering. How could you spend 1 billion without asking? Nami screamed, voice cracking the chandeliers. We're broke again because of you. Hancock rose, regal and murderous. Beloved, control your finance rage. He did this for the fleet. But even her velvet voice shook. Luffy wheezed from the floor, hand on his jaw, grin slightly crooked. Worth it, he declared weakly. Kuro folded the maps and tapped the table. Then it's settled. We rebuild. We convert the gold. And we pray the creditors have a sense of humor. The crew's brittle. Plans were set. Debts were real, and Nami was presently terrifying, exactly how the Shadow Dragon crew liked their mornings. Later, the gold exchange sat between marble columns and the kind of velvet drapes that screamed, do not touch unless you have at least 3 million berry. Inside, chandeliers threw cold light over polished counters, and the manager, a nervous man with 2 tight cuffs and a mouth that smelled of coin, practically wet himself when he saw the mountain of gold. Kuro set the 2 gold on the counter with the calm of a man setting a napkin down. We'd like to exchange this for cash, he said. No smile, no flourish. The manager's pupils narrowed until he looked like someone trying to appraise a diamond with a magnifying glass made of greed. VIP room, he stammered instantly, as if being helpful absolved him of any sin. Please, private, of course. Protection, insurance, he gestured wildly and led them to the velvet-carpeted private room where rich men usually make worse decisions. Richie, having been dragged along for moral support, flopped onto an ottoman and snored through the entire procession, one paw over his nose like a gentleman with allergies. The manager began his dance, polite smiles, the polite staccato of offers. We can provide an appraisal, of course. Perhaps a fair market rate. He slid a paper across the table with numbers that might have meant something in a different universe. Vivi's eyes went flat. She leaned forward, fingers steepled. This gold is from the ancient city of Shandora. It has doented historical value. If you won't pay the market price, a museum will. They'll pay full price, no questions. Her tone was the soft sort that made grown men remember their sins. The manager swallowed. He tried bargaining, pointing to taxes, fees, exchange rates, and the fragile state of the economy as if any of that mattered to a crew that had bought Adam's wood by the billion. Nami's smile, thin and barbed, did not shift. Nami and Kuro and Vivi exchanged looks, the kind of look that meant they had rehearsed this 3 ways and would not be distracted. Tashigi, precise, calm, legalistic, tapped a folder with an official-looking stamp. If you refuse, she said quietly, we will bring this to the Historical Society and the Museum Network. They will offer you the full appraisal and publicize your refusal. Her lip curled with a promise of reputational damage. That, finally, did it. The manager's shoulders fell. He scribbled a number that made Tashigi raise an eyebrow in approval. Kuro checked the math, Vivi hummed as if tallying in her head, and then the manager handed over the roll of bullion and notes like a man who'd been told the price of his soul. They left like a small, efficient tornado, each of them carrying 2 south cases, each case heavy with money and heavier with possibility. The total, when Kuro counted it meticulously, under the indifferent sun, came to 1,204,580,899 berry. Nami walked out clutching her 2 suitcases like a mother with twins. She pressed her cheek to the leather and murmured little adoring noises while Richie snored on, completely unconcerned about economics. Kuro and Vivi reminded her, gently, sternly, that this money was for the ship and for the creditors, that they had plans and debts and deadlines. Nami, still hugging the cases like children, rocked them and sang, "Money, money, money," in a high, silly whisper. Vivi watched her with an exasperated smile and leaned toward Tashigi. "She is beyond help," Vivi whispered, half laughing, half worried. Tashigi's face was unreadable, but there was something like fondness in her eyes. "Let her have this," she replied softly. "For now." They walked back toward the docks, the cases heavier, the plan clearer, and Nami humming all the way, very, very content. The streets of Water 7 shimmered with heat as Katakuri led his group toward the Galila Company's massive shipyard. The air smelled of sawdust, sea salt, and oil, the heartbeat of the city. To keep their arrival from looking like an invasion, Katakuri had decided to bring Kaya along. A softer face among a lineup of warriors. "Remember," he murmured, "we don't want to look menacing." Kaya adjusted the strap of her little yellow dress, patterned with bright flowers, and gave him a flat look. "Katakuri, I am one of the most dangerous individuals in this crew. Don't mistake politeness for weakness." Alvida groaned, arms crossed. "Yes, yes, terrifying," she said dryly. "That adorable floral dress just screams, run for your life." Kaya puffed her cheeks, pretending not to hear. Yamato laughed loudly beside them, her sleeveless kimono hanging loosely around her arms, revealing just enough muscle and curve to draw stares all along the pier. When they entered the wide courtyard of Galila, they saw dozens of shipwrights at work, hammers clanging, wood shavings flying, men shouting measurements across the yard. Among them were 2 figures the Shadow Dragon pirates immediately recognized from Kuro's files. Kaku, balancing gracefully on a beam, long nose unmistakable as he inspected a ship's hull. And Rob Lucci, sitting silently on a railing with a white dove perched on his shoulder, eyes cold and distant. Before they could decide whether to approach, a shout cut through the noise. "Hey, what do you think you're doing dressed like that?" A man with wild blonde hair stormed toward them, face red and veins bulging. Without hesitation, he threw a handful of nails, actual nails, at their feet, narrowly missing Kaya's shoes. Katakuri flinched back. "What the hell is your problem?" "I'll tell you my problem," the man bellowed. "I'm Polly. And these 3, he jabbed his finger like a weapon, are dressed completely inappropriately for a shipyard." He pointed at Yamato first, his tone scandalized. Your kimono's half off your shoulders. Your arms and, your everything are exposed." Then he swung toward Kaya. "And you, that skirt, it's too short." Finally he pointed at Alvida, whose expression was turning darker by the second. "And you're practically naked." The courtyard went dead silent. Yamato blinked, then whispered to Katakuri, "Did this blonde guy hit his head a few times too many?" "Possibly," Katakuri replied dryly, watching Polly fume like a boiling kettle. Before things could explode, another voice echoed from the upper balcony. "Polly, stop harassing our guests." Every worker looked up as Iceberg, the mayor and president of Galila, descended the stairs. He was calm, clean, and distinguished, short blue hair neatly combed back, light stubble along his jaw, and bright eyes that carried both warmth and authority. His long coat flapped in the sea breeze, the symbol of Galila stitched across the breast. Beside him walked a tall blonde woman in glasses and a fitted office outfit, Khalifa, his secretary. The Shadow Dragon pirates immediately recognized her. None of them let it show. Polly rubbed the back of his neck, glaring awkwardly. "Sorry, boss, but these 3 aren't." His words died as he turned toward Khalifa and suddenly yelled, "And you're no better. That skirt's too short." Khalifa sighed deeply, adjusting her glasses. "Honestly, Polly, do you ever stop?" Katakuri hid a smirk while Yamato whispered, "Yep. Definitely hit his head." Possibly several times, Katakuri agreed. Iceberg pinched the bridge of his nose. Forgive him, he said, addressing the group. He means well. Just, not always at the right volume. Kaya smiled sweetly. That's quite all right, Mayor Iceberg. We're here on business, ship business. Iceberg nodded, still curious. Then let's talk inside. The pirates exchanged glances. Behind their polite smiles, they knew exactly what game they were walking into. Iceberg's office smelled faintly of ink, sea air, and old wood, the scent of power built through patience. The windows looked out over the docks, sunlight glinting off the sea. Iceberg took his seat behind the wide mahogany desk, beside him, clipboard in hand and eyes sharp behind her glasses. Now then, Iceberg said pleasantly, folding his hands. What kind of business does the famous Shadow Dragon crew have with me? Khalifa didn't wait for Katakuri to speak. Allow me, Mr. Iceberg. She stepped forward with professional poise, flipping a page on her clipboard. Your visitors are, quite notable. Her tone carried an edge of fascination, or perhaps something colder. She began reading. Charlotte Katakuri, recently joined the Shadow Dragon Pirates. Current bounty, 1,057,000,000 berry. Zoro leaned toward him, whispering, you've got a higher bounty than the captain. Katakuri gave a faint nod. For now, Khalifa continued, expression unreadable. Oni Princess Yamato, 530 million berry. Slip Queen Alvida, 53 million berry. Roranoa Zoro, 110 million berry. Thunder Woman Kaya, 155 million berry. Color Hex Marianne, 38 million berry. Boom Boom Idiot Gem, 45 million berry. Gem slapped his forehead dramatically, almost knocking over his chair. Idiot. I'll sue the world government for character assassination. Kaya patted his shoulder. Just take it as a compliment, Gem. Khalifa ignored the outburst and turned toward Viper. This one doesn't have a bounty listed, sir. Viper leaned back with a sly grin. Not yet. I'm Viper, the Shadow Dragon's main gunner. Iceberg blinked, trying to hide his shock at the sheer numbers being casually recited before him. I see, quite the notorious crew you have. Katakuri's eyes didn't leave Khalifa. Your information is impressive, he said quietly. But tell me, how did you know I joined the crew? To my knowledge, that hasn't been made public. For a split second, Khalifa froze. The air in the room changed, sharp, tense. She recovered quickly, adjusting her glasses with a cool smile. Let's just say I have reliable sources. Katakuri's gaze darkened, his voice whispering to himself. I know your sources. Khalifa stiffened ever so slightly, but Iceberg seemed oblivious, busy scanning through a folder. The tension coiled like a rope ready to snap. Well then, Iceberg said, clearing his throat. What is it you want from Galila? Katakuri turned to face him, calm as a still tide. Our ship needs a full reconstruction. We want your company to handle it. Materials, workforce, discretion, all under your supervision. Khalifa interjected before Iceberg could reply. I'm afraid all of our master shipwrights are booked solid, Mr. Katakuri. I could schedule an appointment for you in 1 or 2 months. Katakuri's lips curved into a thin, knowing smile. No need. He folded his arms, his voice confident. The captain only wants 2 of your finest shipwrights for the job. Iceberg raised an eyebrow. Only 2. Yes, Katakuri said smoothly. You, Mr. Iceberg, and your old friend, Cutty Flam. Or as he calls himself now, Frankie. That name hung in the air like a spark over gunpowder. Iceberg's eyes flicked up, searching Katakuri's expression. Khalifa's mask didn't crack, but her grip on the clipboard tightened slightly. For the first time, Katakuri smiled with genuine satisfaction. Those are the captain's orders. The moment hung heavy between them. Sunlight filtered through the wide office windows, catching dust motes and golden lines. Iceberg leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled, calm mask perfectly in place. So, he said mildly, that's why you came. You want Tom's apprentices, and only them. Katakuri nodded. Correct. And while we talk, the captain himself is on his way to the other one, Frankie. A flicker crossed Iceberg's eyes, the faintest twitch. I'm sorry, he said after a pause, his voice polite but firm. I don't build ships anymore. My days of wielding a hammer are over. Katakuri's reply was cool as still water. Not even if the job involves Adam's wood. Iceberg froze. The air itself seemed to stop. What did you just say? Adams would, Katakuri repeated evenly, watching the older man's composure waver for the first time. Our captain purchased more than 1 billion berry worth of it on the black market 3 days ago. It's already en route to Water 7. For a long moment, Iceberg simply stared at him, the ticking of a clock filling the silence. That's impossible, he said finally. Even the world government can't secure that much, not quietly. Yet he did, Katakuri answered. Iceberg's blue eyes narrowed. Beneath the calm veneer, gears turned fast, calculations, politics, and a tinge of awe. Across the room, Khalifa's expression didn't shift an inch. But Katakuri's observation hockey brushed her aura, and what he felt told another story entirely. Panic, anger, a cold, crawling fear. She knew she was out of her depth, that one wrong word might end her life before she drew her next breath. Still, her voice was composed when she spoke. Sir, she said crisply, may I remind you that what these men are suggesting is highly illegal. They're admitting to trafficking forbidden materials. If word gets out. Khalifa. The word from Iceberg was soft, but it cut through the room like steel. She blinked, startled. Sir, go get some coffee, Iceberg said simply. What? He glanced up from his desk. Coffee. And donuts. For our guests. Khalifa hesitated, jaw tight. But, sir, your reputation. Go, Iceberg said again, his tone carrying a quiet authority that brooked no argument. And make sure the donuts are fresh. Strawberry glaze. That last detail, strawberry, made Katakuri's eyes flash, a quiet recognition in his gaze. He inclined his head slightly, almost amused. Khalifa bit her lip, nodded stiffly, and left, heels clicking against the wooden floor. The door shut behind her with a soft click. For a long heartbeat, neither man spoke. Then Iceberg leaned forward, voice low, the facade of polite detachment gone. So, tell me more, Katakuri. You've piqued my interest. Katakuri's mouth curved into a knowing half-smile. Good, he said, because this ship will be unlike anything the world has ever seen. Outside the door, Khalifa walked briskly down the corridor, calm on the surface but trembling inside. As soon as she turned the corner, her den mushi was already in her hand. CP9, she whispered, voice low. We have a problem. The midday crowd in Docktown was light, the streets slick with seawater and the hum of distant machinery. Smoothie led the small infiltration team, Usopp, Kobe, Sanji, Makita through the market toward the bar that intelligence said Bluno used as cover. Her stride was calm, confident, the kind of calm that made people move out of her way. At the door, she glanced back at her companions. Ready, long nose. Usopp straightened his coat and smirked, his nerves hidden behind a bravado that fooled no one but himself. I was born ready. Sanji flicked his lighter, cigarette flaring. Yeah, ready to lie like a pro, right, hero? Shut up, Usopp muttered, but the corner of his mouth twitched. They entered. The air smelled of smoke, rum, and cheap perfume. A handful of sailors sat scattered around the tables, and behind the counter a heavy-set man in a white shirt and black vest polished glasses without looking up. Bluno. His face was ordinary enough that you could forget it the second you looked away, which was exactly what made him dangerous. Smoothie led them to the counter and sat, motioning the others to do the same. Bluno's dull eyes drifted toward them. What'll it be? 5 drinks, Smoothie said smoothly. Something strong. We've got plans to celebrate tonight. The agent poured without comment. They clinked glasses, and the game began. Smoothie leaned forward just enough for her voice to carry but not attract attention. So, she said, as if continuing a conversation already in progress, our plans to dispose of the devil child are ready. Usopp caught the cue instantly, forcing a cruel grin that didn't quite reach his eyes. Of course, Commander Smoothie. The others are with her right now, Pudding, Chopper, Isa. If Robin tries to run, they exhaled a puff of smoke, keeping his tone casual, almost teasing. You sure about her, though, Smoothie-chan? Robin-chan's the type to play both sides. Maybe she's only with us for her own safety. Smoothie sipped her drink slowly, meeting Bluno's reflection in the mirror behind the counter. Don't worry. If Luffy's suspicions are confirmed, my sister Brûlée will take care of it quietly. No loose ends. The sentence landed perfectly, Casual enough to sound real, heavy enough to smell like classified business. Blueno's posture shifted by a fraction. His expression didn't change, but Smoothie noticed the tiniest pause in his hand as he dried a glass. A heartbeat later, he set it down and murmured, "Excuse me, gentlemen. Enjoy your drinks." Then he disappeared through the door behind the bar. Usopp's smile turned real this time. "Did we just?" Smoothie didn't let him finish. She tossed back the rest of her drink and stood, eyes glinting. "Got you," she said softly, watching the back door swing shut. "Looks like you took the bait, government dog." Sanji grinned, flicking ash into the tray. "Round one to us." Outside, the sea breeze carried the faint echo of a Den Den Mushi dialing. The trap was sprung, Blueno was running to report, and the Shadow Dragon pirates were ready to reel him in. The market of Water 7 bustled beneath the afternoon sun, a maze of shouting vendors, perfume, and salt wind. Robin, Hancock, Pudding, Isa, and Chopper moved easily among the crowd, baskets filling with spices, cloth, and fruit while Salome slithered beside them carrying bundles of meat and Karoo tottered along under a mountain of vegetables. The two animals had somehow turned grocery shopping into a contest of balance. Hidden among Robin's purchases sat a small, oval mirror, its surface faintly shimmering. Brûlée, still inside her mirror world, watched and listened from the other side. Luffy had made her the hidden ear of their operation. If CP9 reached out, Brûlée would hear every word. Robin's eyes scanned every alley and reflection as they walked. "Do you think our little ruse is working?" she whispered, her tone calm but her fingers tight on the basket handle. Hancock leaned closer, her voice a silken murmur. "Of course. If they truly believe we plan to dispose of you, they'll make contact soon enough. Agents like these can't resist an opportunity." Her smile was faint, dangerous. "They'll come to recruit you, thinking they hold the leash." Robin's lips curved slightly. "Then I'll let them think so." Pudding, walking backward to face them, cocked her head. "So why'd you decide to come shopping with us instead of going with Luffy, Hancock-sama?" Hancock sighed softly, her posture still regal even among barrels of fish. "Luffy said he wished to meet this, Frankie, alone. I don't know why, but it was his choice." Her eyes softened as she glanced skyward. "He said that once the ship is rebuilt, we'll need a true shipwright among our family. My guess is that he intends to see if this Frankie is worthy." Isa tugged at Robin's sleeve. "Is he strong?" Robin smiled down at her. "If Luffy's interested, he must be." Pudding huffed, folding her arms. "Well, I hope he's not another weirdo. We've got enough of those already." She threw a glance toward Chopper, who was examining a jar of jam larger than his head, and some of them eat way too much sugar. "Hey!" Chopper protested, cheeks pink. Salome hissed a laugh, Karoo quacked triumphantly, as if agreeing. The women shared a quiet moment of amusement, the kind that felt almost normal, until Hancock's eyes flicked to a shop window. For just an instant, the reflection shimmered wrong. Brûlée's whisper came through faintly from the mirror tucked in Robin's basket. "Someone's watching you. Keep walking." Two men, suits, hats, following from the right. Robin didn't even turn her head and murmured, "Understood." Hancock's smile never wavered. "It seems the fish are nibbling at the bait." They moved deeper into the market, laughter still on their lips, eyes sharp as blades, each of them knowing that the game with CP9 had truly begun.